I have no sound now. My sound's gone. Shit.
Uh-oh. We have to reboot and come back later.
No. There we go. There we go.
Okay, good.
Hey, Glass Jaws, Mystical. Still waiting for Eric to log in, but we're early. We're a minute or two early on our thing, so we're good. He'll be here. Or just play it safe with Facebook Messenger. Ooh, I never gave him a login ID.
Oh yeah, please do so, yeah.
That was dumb. I am messing up everything.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it was
somehow I closed Zoom out. There we go. Return to meeting. There we go.
Yep.
There. Okay. Duh.
Yeah, I was very rusted this morning. We hadn't run games in over a month, so I was kind of very, very rusty.
There we go. Yeah, I know it gets that way sometimes with just, I have the same issue sometimes.
Well, if you haven't run
what's
for a
up?
month, then you kind of lose your traction and things a bit.
Hope everyone's doing well out there. Well, kind of. I mean, Age of Worms is all over the place with multiple deities. I think Erik can explain that. So, what their thought process was that they had a lot of, it's going to be a really cool discussion tonight. I just want to keep on checking for them. Hey, Josh. Yeah, we did too. Yes. Absolutely. good. I think all tech is good here.
Yeah, good.
I guess I gotta show. I guess I gotta show this again still, because Chuck hasn't given me anything yet. Chuck has not given me any new. I get to yell at him. Facebook Messenger up on my here. Just in case. Alright, he's green dotted, which is good.
Yeah.
Opening that. Say Lord Forth. I don't know what, Josh, I have no idea what you're talking about, so no idea, and I'm just going to ignore whatever that discussion is, because I don't know.
Merchant daughter, okay.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about the Tim game.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it, talking about the Tim game. Aha! Wow, Mountain just discorded me something, and wow, okay. I got too much going on here, there, darling. Today, it's one of those days where I'm lucky if I remember what day of the week it is. I think it's
Yeah,
Sunday.
today is special day. Yep.
Yeah. And now look, I'm like, what button do I hit next? Holy shit. Nah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm probably going to. right, it's 6:54. We're a little early. We're still waiting on Eric. So, hey, Greg, good to see you. We're still rolling in here. We are not answering that question tonight. We're not taking any OGL questions. Not to be rude or mean. We're not doing it. So we're not speculating.
Yeah, exactly. It might be time for that later on the show. That when we know stuff and we have some answers. Maybe.
I told Eric already that they just don't know, and there's a lot of legal things going on with Paizo, and I can't go there. I'm not gonna go there. It's all speculation, and I don't want to. I don't want to think it. Now, if he wants to make a statement at the beginning, we'll do that. But yeah, we're going to stay with the OGL question tonight. It's a tough one. Just we don't know, and I'd rather not speculate.
There's a lot of other YouTube shows where they do speculate.
Yeah, they do. And,
there's no
lack of crazy out there now, and I don't want to go crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I talked to him a little bit, darling. He said, "Look, I may just make a statement at the beginning to get the elephant in the room out, and then that'll be it." And I said, "Well, that's perfectly fine, man. If that's what you want to do." So, but yeah, he said Eric hasn't logged on yet, so we're still awaiting him. But good evening, everyone. How are you doing? We got Anna and myself here while we're waiting for Eric to come on.
Yep.
I know he's coming, so let me fix that mess. Stupid thing there. So hopefully everyone's having a good evening tonight on a Sunday as we keep on rolling here. We got a lot of wonderful things going on in the community, and I'm all excited. I'm really, about things that are going on, and we're going to talk. We're going to continue this discussion.
It's been
long
one.
With
many.
Dungeons. This is our 10th one. Hey, Malden, I got it. I got your link. I even have it. Pasted it up, so I got that. So I really appreciate that information there. I mean, you did a lot in that era with them, which is really cool. Do we need a sub to see the VODs? I don't know what that means.
Video on demand afterwards, probably.
No. I never do that. No.
Go to YouTube.
YouTube and both. YouTube and no.
Yep.
No, absolutely not. No, I'm not that way. YouTube and Twitch, you can always pick them all up. Absolutely. Yep. So we normally, I normally prep ahead a certain number. I only did 3 today because I think we're gonna.
Well, there is enough, I think, for cover just in these issues that cover Age of Worms with all the surrounding discussions and stuff.
Plus, there's 2 unbelievable non-Age of Worms adventures.
In these issues?
Yeah, in these issues. Give me 1 second.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And since Erik were the editor-in-chief, then he probably knows about them too. So, yeah.
Well, he does. And here he comes, everyone. Dun, 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 dun,
Great.
Dun, dun, dun.
Awesome.
Dun, dun,
Fantastic.
Dun, dun,
Yep.
There he is. Long hair and all.
Hell yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Welcome.
What's up, dude? How you doing?
Good to see you.
I'm doing all right.
Awesome.
We live in interesting times, as they say.
Yes, we do. Yep.
Darling says first one. It said, "Hey, Eric, great in chat." So.
Yep.
We may have a Venerian Vord and Wild Mage reunion coming up for the next fundraiser, right?
I think that would be quite nice indeed.
Yep. Awesome.
So, look at that, a raid coming in right away from Bracker. Thank you. So, Eric,
yes, sir.
We are going to. I got. We're going to stay away from the huge issue out there, unless you want to make a quickie statement, and then we'll move on from it. How's that sound?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we should. People are curious, so I'll say what I can.
Okay, sounds good. Here we go. And then we'll move on from it. How's that sound? Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
People are curious.
Take your time. We're not. We're all good here. Here we go. I got a little feedback. Is that you? Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I think that's on Eric's end, isn't it?
It was
Yeah,
me.
I think
It
so.
was
Yeah.
me. I apologize.
Bracker, it's okay. Everyone, Eric Mona, the legendary Eric Mona. We got some. We're gonna be talking. We're gonna be talking some wonderful, wonderful content. I mean, legendary content
Oh.
here tonight. Absolutely
I
exciting.
love my favorite thing about your show, Jay, is it couldn't be a softer opening. You never know when it actually starts. For all I know, I've been on camera for the last 2 hours. Hi, everybody.
Good to see you, man. It's really
Yep.
good to see you.
Nice to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, we're really excited about this. We got people rolling in. Yeah, and I thank you. This is our 10th. We've been doing Dungeon Magazine, Greyhawk Adventures and Dungeon Magazine all the way from the beginning, and now we're
Yeah.
up to 124. And then I
Mhm.
said, I'm going to take a shot at the dark. Okay, you want to come on,
Yeah.
talk about this? We
We
did
done
Yeah.
20 hours. We done 20 hours of it.
yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
amazing. It took me
And-
20 hours to read this adventure. So I
Yeah.
But when we did Cauldron, one person out of 4 weeks or whatever, because all those adventures are they're strewn out pretty far and they're long.
Yeah.
One person had run it. I mean, almost everyone has an aspect or knows about Age of Worms, so it's a real different, little different feel to it, So, but
You mean, are you trying to say you think Age of Worms is a little bit better? More people are more familiar with
it's
it.
more
than-
Greyhawk centric.
Well, that's for sure with this crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Cauldron was really nominally set in the world of
Deities
Greyhawk.
only, and then
And even then, only almost sort of kind of retroactively. It wasn't really until Savage Tide where it always said, "Oh, there's Cauldron," and then Cauldron is near this bigger city called Sassarine, and then I don't really remember exactly, but my gut I mean, I wasn't even on the dungeon staff when 98, which was the first one with Shackle City adventure in it,
Right.
I believe. And so that was even before I was around. So to what degree there was any kind of Greyhawk connectivity originally, I think it had about that same sort of core rule book. Yeah, it's the Clerics of St. Cuthbert, because that's what's in the core rule book or whatever.
Yeah.
But as you might know from our prior conversations and just by guessing, I was never quite satisfied with that level of depth of connectivity to the Greyhawk setting insofar as the core rules are concerned. So once I got on board on the staff, things got a little bit more. I just kind of figured if I know it all, I would have to more actively try to forget it to clear it out than to just roll with it. So we rolled with it.
Yeah.
And we've gone over it, and those adventures are mega long, each of them, and that, and it's the scale at the end is crazy. I mean, it's really it's ultra level gaming, but the artwork and at the end the NPC profile page, all that stuff was like groundbreaking. It was cool.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I still dream about that NPC page. I very definitely was on staff when we did that. And Jeff Carlisle was the illustrator, and it had that kind of old timey, here's the silhouette of the characters with the number, and then that corresponds to a key, and it struck us as a really fun thing to do, and we'd always wanted to emulate that with all the campaigns, but that was one of the many ideas that just sort of wish we could have, but it didn't happen. And takes the right combination of time and art direction and gumption, I guess, but everything came together for that one illustration.
So let's get this out of the way, and then let's have fun. The rest of the 2 hours.
Yeah.
Let's do
OGL statement. What do you got for us?
I mean, I don't have an OGL statement. The reality is things are still very much in flux. And in terms of Paizo, the company where I'm currently a publisher that uses the open game license and has been a champion of open gaming from the very beginning, trying to interpret the new regime and the new trying to process all the information and then build a business strategy around it takes more than a couple of days. And so I just don't have really anything official to say on the issue. I guarantee you when we do have something official to say, everyone will hear it.
Everyone's hearing on Twitter.
But we're not
now.
quite there yet.
Oh
I mean,
gosh.
I can, there's a couple things that I can basically assure people of, and that is that, no matter what, Paizo will continue to publish Pathfinder and Starfinder material. No matter what, Paizo is committed to the concept of open gaming. It would be the height of hypocrisy for us to not embrace open gaming, since we couldn't exist without it. So where that leaves us when the framework that we've all been using to open material up and share it, that up until a couple of weeks ago we'd been assured was perpetual, and I guess still is perpetual, but I guess we're all learning it's not irrevocable. Surprise. So we're trying to deal with that and figure out what our options are. And the fact of the matter is there are many options, but Paizo's not the kind of company that moves back on its core values, and I'll just leave it at that for now, and we'll see where things
fantastic.
Stay tuned. I guarantee you there'll be some blockbuster announcements in the next few days, probably from lots of other people as well. So it's
awesome.
It's wow, feel everything old is new again, huh, folks?
Speaking
of which, dungeon number 124.
Yes. But we're gonna talk before that, and I want to show you why. We're gonna go back one, if you're okay with that, to 123.
Yeah, please.
And the reason I want to do that is that you have, I loved it. And I shared this the last time we did this discussion, but I think it would behoove me to do that again. And that was talk about your statements you made in this in 123. Of course, now.
Oh, I didn't look. Tell me. What did I
yes, exactly. So hold on one second. Were kind I'm just trying to. Because I was like, I should have.
It's called following the path. That was the
absolutely. So let's take a look at that real quick in 123, because that was a good setup for this. So
this has been a fun experience, by the way, Jay. I have not looked at this stuff since 2005.
Well,
or probably into 2006 to refer back to it. Working on the back end of the campaign, but I played it. I ran the first all the way up through the Champion's Belt as our weekly campaign at Paizo. So I'm like very, very familiar with it, and both as a player and as a GM and as a publisher and all that. But this has been the first time I've like really delved back into it again. It's been tremendous.
Oh, that's
fun.
awesome.
Reading old editorials and old Mount Zogons and stuff. Highly enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and the same thing. I think a lot of people in the Greyhawk community, me included, we went through it and read through it and all that when it came out, and now it's been so many years that it's falling back, and we need to go back and relook at it again, because so it's been that long now. We have to go back and remember it again. Okay, Jay.
So this talks about how the shackled city fell into your lap, kind of, right at the beginning. It says, "So I have this crazy idea Chris Thomason told me one summer day. I'm going to publish a whole campaign from start to finish. I'm thinking we'll set it in a city built into a volcano." What do you think? He asked. Are you kidding? I replied, I think it sounds effing. Well, I'm assuming that's what that is. I want to spot at the lunchtime play test.
Fabulously. That's what.
So is this the birth of the adventure path?
No.
In a way, no, it's not.
I'm happy to answer that, but the short answer is no.
The birth is the Mirror of Dead Men. Right, the Mirror of Dead Men series is the birth. I think.
I mean, insofar you could pick a couple of different spots. I think that for me, there's like a campaign. So was against the Giants and Adventure Path. I mean, arguably.
True. That's GDQ.
Right, and then you had really where the phrase started coming into play was the adventure series that started with the Sunless Citadel from 3rd edition D&D.
True.
I don't know that the phrase adventure path was ever used in public. In fact, I sort of remember some internal communications from Ryan Dancy, who was in charge of D&D at the time, sort of saying they wanted the adventures to hook together, but I think they thought the idea that you needed to know what was going to happen in the last one to even start the first one, or the idea of taking on an entire campaign, was a little daunting for people. So even though those adventures were linked barely, the idea was like, don't tell anyone outside the company that this is an adventure path. But I think that was where the phrase adventure path kind of started at Wizards. And then they did, Chris Thomason did Shackled City, as I discussed in that editorial, and really embraced the name and the idea. And then I think from that point, kind of looking backwards, it's like, oh, well, we've already done this once before, and it was Eric Boyd's Mirror of Dead Men.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that was ever explicitly referred to as an adventure path as much as a.
Yeah.
It was a series of advenures that all had a
Series of
link.
adventures.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's you're getting into sort of some nomenclature.
Dungeon.
No, but yeah, but
Yeah.
we kind of curious where the term came from,
I
because
hope
now
no
it's
one-
kind of an established term.
I
so
loved
yeah.
I loved them so much. I ran them in Greyhawk, and I put them
Yeah.
in. I mean, they were fantastic.
Well, just by way of warning, I guess I hope no one who's seen me on the show before has forgotten my deep pedantry when it comes to things like this. So when you ask me questions about the history of stuff, there'll probably be maybe 2 or 3 superfluous paragraphs here and there.
Yep.
That's okay.
That's
what-
great.
We love
Yep.
the discussion. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So you go on here about Chris leaving his position, and then you put it in James Jacobs' hands here, right? And then even before it went out with a little bang, I started tinkering with the concepts and ideas that would form the basis of Dungeon's next full feature campaign, Age of Worms Adventure Path. And then you're talking about, about Age of Glory, of Dreams, and of Great Sorrows, marks the human tally of years. I mean, some really great deep thought on this and what's going on in your background and how you come up, with this idea. Also, the list of authors: Wolfgang, Sean, Mike, Merles, Jesse Decker, Tito, Greg Vaughn, Keith Baker, Eric Boyd. They'll provide conversions. All part of this team. Tonight, I have prepped. Think about this: Eric's adventure, Mike Merles' second adventure, and Sean Reynolds' third adventure, or the first 3. I mean, that's an amazing, trio.
That's
right
a
there
lineup you got there. Yep.
So I can sense the excitement. You had excitement because the previous month you were play testing.
I was already running the campaign for several months by the time I wrote that editorial, if I remember correctly. So we'd been playing. I would say that before, in fact, I saw some evidence to this, that by the time Whispering Cairn came out, our playtest was already very clearly through Sean's adventure, the swamp one.
Yep.
I don't even remember what it's called anymore, but that we definitely had played through that, and because there's just some NPC names and things in the Diamond Lake thing that I think came from those sessions. Those were really unique sessions in the playtest. That's 2 modules down the road, but we did a fun thing where there's an element of where I think it was some lizard folk and maybe even some some spawn of Cayuse. Actually, it was the
Cayusian lizard ghoul,
right.
thing.
And so we actually did a pre-session, a slot 0 session, where all of the players played 0 level or 1st level warrior guards during the attack of these undead, and they all just got snuffed out. And then it was like, all right, we're done with the session. Everyone's like, what the hell? And it's like, okay, now the player characters are approaching the same keep several weeks later, and the players are, oh shit. That was a fun one, and some of those NPCs ended up in the Diamond Lake.
So what who came up, and what are the initial thoughts and stuff? Meaning, why choose this path? Why start in that area? Why Q's and all that? Meaning the basic theme. Where did this? Yeah, exactly.
So I think I've been thinking about that as I've been reading through these materials again, and I think that the primary, there were probably 2. Let's call it 3 primary instigators for the number 1 was there were a couple of loose ends, if you will, in some of the material from Shackled City. In particular, so quickly rewind to tell a story I've told a number of times before. When I took over Dungeon, as you mentioned, Jay, Shackled City adventures were coming every 2 issues, every 3 issues, something like that. There were these kind of immense things. I always make a connection to the sort of Comp 101, creative writing class exercise known as an exquisite corpse, where you write 2 lines of a poem, you fold over the first line, you hand it to the next person, they write 2 more, they fold it over. And so together you're creating this poem, but you don't really know, you only have a little bit of like the where it left off from the previous person. And so once you're done, you kind of unfurl it like a scroll and you read it, and it's funny or it's unexpected or it's just weird in a sort of William S. Burroughs kind of way or whatever. And that's really what Shackled City was. It was like, okay, Jay, you write adventure 1. And then we get it in, and then we send it to Anna, and we say, Anna, you write adventure 2. And whether Anna picked up on every little plot device that you added to number 1, or maybe that was more expected that would happen with the 3rd adventure or the 4th adventure, but maybe that didn't get picked up. So there were 2, and I consider them glaring as an editor and as like a continuity fiend and stuff, but most people probably honestly didn't even notice. But there were James Jacobs and I noticed. James Jacobs being the managing editor under me on Dungeon at the time, who did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of editing of the modules and stuff. And so number 1 loose end was this character Celeste, who had been brought up and was super mysterious, but never really tied that up, and that stuck in our craw, and we wanted to make sure that whatever we did with the 2nd adventure path, that character would play a role of some kind. And then the other one was that one of the sort of subplots of the Shackled City adventure path involved this cult called the Ebon Triad, but they had never really
developed.
We had never really closed up that gap to explain what the hell that was, or who they even were, what their goals were. So kind of weirdly, one of the first impulses was, whatever we do is, let's start with finishing what we already started. So let's, do those 2 things. So that was just kind of a petty little in-house proud nail. We got to fix those kinds of things. Then I think another big instigator was, I was finally in charge, to be totally honest. And so I loved the idea of the adventure path. I didn't love the idea that it was set in this kind of generic, the utility of Cauldron is you could literally put it anywhere, but I really longed for it to be put in a specific place, and as that was happening, I was really involved with Living Greyhawk, Gazetteer, and setting up, I'd come from just setting up that whole campaign. So Greyhawk was very important to me as well. And I always wanted to, it's kind of like, I felt like the idea of Greyhawk being the default setting for 3rd edition was sort of like an unfulfilled promise, because none of the people who worked on 3rd edition gave a shit about Greyhawk or cared about it at all, other than just something they did 20 years ago. Like, I'm sure Skip Williams cared about it. I'm not trying to cast aspersions in a general sense. And certainly some of the top brass, they didn't care about Greyhawk. It was just like, let's find something generic that's tied to the history of the game, that in their mind, I've said this a million times, but Greyhawk was the 1980. We're dealing with a generation gap here too, right? And it's weird because now I deal with that as an aging, person, and there's 20-year-olds on my staff. It's like, you're an idiot. Well, that was back then, and so I just I always felt like I had the knowledge and the gumption and the guts to do it right. And so if they were going to say the default setting is Greyhawk, I'd say, cool, let me add it, And so with that in mind, I wanted to do something that was not just kind of tied into the setting that I loved, and that was not just going to answer those 2 annoying questions that James and I had about the first one, but that was going to be like, if this is an official D&D campaign, let's soak in the D&D of it all, let's... Yeah. And again, I got some early pushback from Wizards. Like my first outline for this had 20 adventures, which in retrospect would have been a horrible idea.
Yeah.
It was Chris Perkins, a former editor of the magazine, who was like, dude, no. And he was right. And then the other thing is they're like, we don't they knew my shtick at this point too. So I think they were like, we don't want it to really be a Greyhawk campaign. And I said, okay, I can get away with a whole bunch of peripheral Greyhawk stuff that, quite frankly, none of y'all are even going to notice. And I got to make up a noun, so I might as well use a noun that works. Yeah. But I also kind of got what they were saying, So in I guess what happened then to some degree was, it maybe pulled away a little bit in my mind as I'm revising from 20 to 12 adventures. It pulled away from being like, it's a D&D adventure that's really Greyhawk, to like, it's a D&D adventure that's really D&D. It's just that for so much of the history of the game up to that point, D&D and Greyhawk had been synonymous. And certainly my, early years as a player and things like that, D&D, Greyhawk was AD&D, folks, but that's what it is. And so that allowed us to kind of eventually lean into some aspects of just D&D that happened to also be aspects of Greyhawk. And so that's where we started pulling in like Dragotha and Caius, himself, because it's like, is Caius a Greyhawk deity up to that point? Yeah. Kinda, but mostly Caius was like an entry in the Fiend Folio. So some of it was trying to strengthen some of those ties and have a thing that just felt wholly authentically Dungeons and Dragons. And so that was the main goal. And there's all kinds of signposts of that stuff in here, especially including like the rival adventuring group that we'll get into in a minute. They have no tie to Greyhawk, but they have a very keen tie to Dungeons and Dragons. And so that's really it, is I had something to prove. I wanted to use as much Greyhawk and D&D lore as possible. I wanted to lean into the idea of an official D&D campaign. Ought to use all the tools in the shed, or at least the tools that I was allowed to use, which was all of them except for about 4, and just go full tilt. And that was pretty much it. So that was kind of, I would say that was the impetus. I will also say that very, very early on in my development and my thinking, and I think you can tell there's some skeleton of this left in the fossil here, but when I first started thinking, okay, it's got to be like a D&D campaign, what's the most D&D campaign that I could do, especially if it wasn't going to be like, you're apprentices to the Circle of 8 or something that's like super Greyhawk, what could I do? And I really early fell into the idea of the Rod of 7 Parts. I always thought the Rod of 7 Parts was kind of the iconic, or one of 5 maybe iconic D&D artifacts, and yet I was always sort of a little bit underwhelmed by the previous treatments. I have, but still to this day have not read Frank Menser's Dwarven Quest for the Rod of 7 Parts RPGA scenarios. I'm looking forward to that, but my suspicion is that they're not quite what I would have wanted. And then Skip's box set from second edition struck me as a fairly peripheral approach to the topic, but that added a bunch of lore that I didn't really love, but I was kind of intrigued by. And so I wanted to kind of take some of that and use that as the framework for sort of the campaign. And that's really why the Whispering Cairn is a tomb of an ancient Wind Duke of Akka, the air elemental people who made the Rod of 7 Parts, is because originally it was going to kind of be a Rod of 7 Parts campaign, but as we developed the outline and as Watsi gave us some thoughts about how to, modify our original plans and things like that, the Rod of 7 Parts became a little bit more secondary to the overall plot, which then started leaning into things like Cayuse and so on and so forth. But I still could, I'd already written the module, so what are you going to do? So the Wind Duke stuff became more of like a subplot of the campaign rather than an entire plot. But I was just reading the little sidebar about it, and it's like, at momentous times in history, these big artifacts just find a way of showing up. And I thought at very least that would kind of, if you're using those things as a weapon, that would kind of even like ramp up the stakes of the overall campaign and make it even more D&D, even if the campaign itself was not about the Rod of 7 Parts. So there you go.
Cool. So you discussed a lot of things right there, which is wonderful. No, it's fantastic, Eric. We could listen to you all night. It's like you and Ed, we can listen to you guys all night talk. Man, you know what I mean?
Awesome.
It's just someone has been texting me in Discord. Well, remind Eric that they took my Cayuse idea.
No.
Malden.
Okay. Oh well, he probably did have it, because some of this stuff we were talking about still, I think I'm on Greyhawk chat.
He said that SKR wrote his original reworking of Cayuse, and you guys used it, and I know you've done a lot with Malden's Free City, map and all that, and I know it's just I wanted to mention that Malden did a whole thing on Cayuse, which kind of got implemented into the whole, into the entire Age of Worms campaign, which is really neat.
I certainly won't dispute that. I had a number of sort of secret, not so secret, but just like a cadre of really strong
brilliant
consultants and writers and things during this. And you just listed a bunch of them when we went over.
Gen Con chat with SKR was in 1999, he says, when that happened. So and that's just, you had some brilliant minds back then. Like I said, really I'm envious of that era that I wasn't participating. So
so when you had the basic themes and ideas, how did you go about setting it location wise? Because it is grounded in Greyhawk, in places and locations and stuff.
I think it went like this. I think it was, okay, Rod of 7 Parts. What do we do with that? I think knowing from what I've read today and just my memory, I think we as a from some line of lore in some book assumed that Pesh, the field of Pesh where the battle was fought, was north of the Ner Div, and so it was like, okay, so if people died in that, and I want to have a tomb of a Wind Duke of Akka, where's the most iconic place to have a tomb for that? It's probably in the Cairn Hills, and in fact, it's old enough that it could have been like the Wind Dukes were the first to kind of inhabit that area and put tombs in there, and that's why everyone in the thousands of years since have put tombs in that region. I was just, I think, I mean, come on, City of Greyhawk, Cairn Hills,
Yeah, it's
come on now, what's more iconic than the center of the bullseye, and so, so that's where that came down. And then of course I have been a lore fanatic and a fan of stuff forever, and the city of the town of Diamond Lake, I think, was from one of the cards in the City of Greyhawk box set.
I think that's where it came from.
And then we were able to tie in like the Cult of the Green Lady, which was another one of those cards, and then it just, from there it was just like, cue the Benny Hill song as I'm putting in every little reference I possibly can for the next 12 issues.
Well, when it came out, and I saw Diamond Lake, I'd been running Diamond Lake since the Free City of Greyhawk box set came out.
Oh, really?
Well, it's like it was the base for my Mongrels of the Putrid Tongue campaign.
Yeah. Was it as dire a shithole as the one?
Absolutely. In fact,
I
was telling, and here's another thing everyone out there should know. I think it's who did the map? Oh my gosh, brilliant map here.
This map,
oh man,
probably Lazaretti.
Yeah, it's a Lazaretti.
I think it's it's a Lazaretti. It's that era.
Rob Lazaretti.
Yeah.
Speaking of kind of the supporting cast of the era of the magazine era, he did the update of the Darlene map. He did almost all in the magazine.
But there was a lot of this era, and later eras, pen cartographer and all sorts of stuff. I mean, there was a lot of third-party maps were being made more real, so we have more realistic maps of it.
It's always nice to have third parties supporting the main stuff, huh?
It is, isn't it? The ironies of that comment. But we've been playing in that area as well, and I've actually used this for what I'm doing in my campaign from that point on when it came out, because oh my god, I got detail now,
Isn't that fun? I mean, it is kind of a mixed blessing sometimes when you're like, oh, the town I've already put a bunch of effort in now has professional maps and more continuity and all that, and then you look
at entire story behind it.
Your fingers are crossed. Oh god,
what have they done?
It's going to be Fate of Istis or whatever, but there you have it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take this question real quick on you, Eric, because Casey Brown, of course, is asking, why doesn't Ayuz appear at all in the entire Age of Worms setting at all in the discussion? Is he's too picky, too pissant for the big gods there?
Well, he's been dispatched by Mika Oba, the wolf nomad.
There you go. Yep.
And not by Mika Oba, but actually by the Princess Buttercup or whatever her name was. And even Ayuz should fear the wrath of a woman scorned. So
there you go.
I had no choice.
It's a Greyhawk labeled product.
Go,
so
that's awesome.
No, I mean, I think to be totally honest, I think that I did feel like if I spent a bunch of time talking about the Court of Red Hand or Rift, the Great Rift and stuff, I'm fine. But the more I was like, and then friggin' Morden Kanan comes and Ayuz is there, and I just kind of pushing my luck a little bit. And I, just to be totally, I didn't want to tell a story about Ayuz. I felt like Ayuz had been. I think Ayuz is really cool, and now that I haven't touched Greyhawk for 20 years, I've got all kinds of cool ideas of what you could do with that. But it had kind of been one of the focuses of the From the Ashes era. He'd just gotten a full source book. I didn't want to set something in the Grey Kingdom either. I wanted to hit some of those lesser developed areas. And I do count something that was detailed on a card, an adventure hook card, as less developed, even if it's very near the City of Greyhawk. But even the City of Greyhawk, we didn't go into that much. It was just, I really wanted to focus on some of the bandit kingdoms and some of the slightly more obscure filling in the blanks kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So it was never a part of the agenda from day one.
Rex Fellis asked another question about, you guys, did you change the terminology just to say Free City instead of City of Greyhawk at that point? Okay.
So basically the original outline was like Greyhawk, and then Watsy was like, well, you can't call it Greyhawk. And I said, okay.
Just call it Free City. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
But also, very explicitly in the sidebars, the Free City is a stand-in for the big city, wherever you want it to be. If you want it to be Waterdeep, great. If you want it to be Sharn, City of Towers in the Eberron setting, that'll work too. So it really, again, I don't want to make it sound like I was like trying to get away with a great caper here. It was just like I wanted to provide some fun flavor for those who are in the know, and then provide a campaign that touched on classic D&D themes that anyone could play and enjoy. So
Awesome.
so as much as I kind of like to play up the sneaky thing, I think everyone kind of knew what was likely to happen, and I was just trying to be respectful. We were, after all, producing this under license, so
when it holds its the test of time, you're gold. So I forgot to mention another thing. You do tie in. Hey, we're bringing out a hardback book of Cauldron at the same time, and my gosh, that thing's worth a ton, right?
That
it's book
cool.
is.
I hope so, because I just found I was emptying out my office because we're not working from the office anymore. We're working from home, and so that's been kind of an interesting experience just to go through 22 years worth of stuff.
The huge,
heavy,
big.
You have the book plate that comes in the front of yours. Did you get one that has a?
I have a huge map thingy.
Okay, and then there was like a sticker that you got if you ordered it directly from us.
I ordered directly from you, but I got there's.
Anyway, I looked at my own sticker and I got number 1, y'all. I have the number 1.
I think mine had disappeared somewhere. I think it was in here, and I kind of.
It's probably.
I think
if this book is worth something, then surely mine's worth the most. And
yours is worse. Yeah,
I don't need to sell it on eBay in the next few months. But it's exciting to know that I've got it. Yeah.
Very, very cool.
So it was interesting that hardcover came out at about the time that we were starting this one. So just interesting how things kind of correlate.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would have loved to do an Age of Worms hardcover back in the day, but things just didn't work out that way at that time. So maybe someday.
Who knows what's going to happen in the next 2 months, right?
Exactly. we don't know. Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, but again, I've learned to look at the business in longer terms than just 2 months and 2 years. Even I've been doing this now since I think I joined the industry officially in 1999, so I'm now in year 24. And I've seen. I was there at the Battle of Pesh. I'm an old person now, and so it's. Things change all the time, and that's another reason not to get too down about stuff that seems like it's bad news. Every once in a while, it's things will change, and there's opportunities all around. So,
so what was groundbreaking with this is you did not have one, but you had 2 supplements to the Dungeon magazine, and that was you had I should have started at the top. These damn PDF. You had the map handout supplement, which has all sorts of great, and everything is high res too. Plus
I don't even have that.
No, plus
I didn't even remember we did that, so I'm glad you loved it.
Plus Age of Worms Overload.
I remember distinctly because as the magazine's editor, when your own contributions push something 20,000 words over the amount of space you have, you end up having to make some bonus PDFs.
John, their downloads, their DM downloads, I don't think they're available anywhere. So if you have,
I don't even have it.
I don't have all of them. I have enough, but I don't have all of them for the Age of Worms, every single one. But I have the first 3 we're going to discuss tonight. So
those map supplements were good. Of course, there's precedent for that kind of thing as well. But it's cool.
But all the artwork's right there, real handily, and also the conversions over are here too. Like Forgotten Realms, Eric Boyd writes up how to do it in Forgotten Realms, so it's kind of
that was another kind of surprise in the past as I was looking through here, and one of my little sidebars is like, and we've got Eric Boyd to tell you how to do it in the Forgotten Realms, and Keith Baker to tell you how to do it in Eberron. And I thought to myself, that was a smart idea. Cool, good thinking, Eric, or James, or both of us, or whatever. So. That's cool. I should also give some credit on that Age of Worms Overload. The stat blocks in there was another thing that I didn't have a ton of time for, and so I recruited fresh. I think he was an employee at that time, or he was just on the cusp of being an employee. No, he was an employee. Jason Bullman, the lead designer, actually did all of the stat blocks in the Age of Worms, or most of the stat blocks in the Age of Worms Overload. So it was a real. I mean, there's a lot of Paizo sort of DNA in Age of Worms coming together here.
Yeah.
Lots, and this has stat blocks for I think everything all the way through, which is really
And that in and
fantastic.
of itself, by the way, guys, and I was reading earlier today, going through the Diamond Lake write-up part of this, which is also quite extensive. And really all of that was just me being like, what sucked is the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, where they give you no information about the town where the adventure is ostensibly set. And so I the three sort of templates for Diamond Lake and the Whispering Cairn in terms of the adventure side of it was Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, Village of Hamlet, and Against the Cult of the Reptile God, which were all kind of the definitive opening level. Here's where you start. Here's a complete town. And I think each of those adventures did a different degree of a good job in terms of giving you the tools that you actually need. Now, of course, as a DM, that's kind of the fun is you make that stuff up yourself. But what I came to learn as the editor of Dragon and Dungeon is that that's a luxury that is actually a fairly small percentage of the gaming public is like, I get my hobby from dreaming up maps to towns and fake backgrounds and all this adventure hooks. The reason people buy supplements and magazines and things is because they want you to do that work for them. And so if the idea is to give people everything that they need in order to run the campaign, I think we went super heavy into detailing Diamond Lake and into giving all the stat blocks you would ever need. And looking back at it, the whole thing just makes me tired. I can't imagine how much energy it took us to do all this in the course of
younger.
It's like the power of the 20s.
Yeah.
But, it's a lot of audacity and just wanting to just win, just do a great job. I mean, there was everyone committed to it on this project.
Didn't you run like a companion articles in Dragon magazine that did
we did
some
a
of
series called Worm Food?
Exactly. That was a lot of the mechanics, some of the auxiliary stuff, so to speak.
Stuff, so if you wanted to join the Cult of the Green Lady, what powers would come from that. Here's a map of your the mine manager's office that's your hideout and stuff like that, because it's always a little tricky to weave in player information with oodles and oodles of campaign secrets and things like that. And at the time, although this eventually faded when I ended up taking over Dragon as well, because I never really agreed with it, but around the time we reinvented the magazines in Dungeon 114 and Dragon 323, I was the editor-in-chief of Dungeon at the time. Another person, in fact, Chris Thomason was the editor of Dragon at that point, because he had finished Shackle City and then moved on to that magazine. And I think that we were challenged by the company's new publisher, Keith Strom, to really kind of identify, what do they call it? Relaunch the magazines essentially. And one of the things that came out of that for Dungeon was the end of the Polyhedron D20 zine part that had been in it, the return or the embracing of the idea of a low, medium, high level adventure in every single volume. So no matter what kind of you needed in that given day, if you're going to grab a magazine off the shelf, Dungeon had something for you. And I think Dragon had a little bit harder time trying to come up with an identity beyond just like, hey, we're the D&D magazine. And one of the routes that they picked was, it's only going to have player content. And so if you look at the early issues of the Dungeon relaunch, you'll see that in addition to retooling Dungeon for what I thought would be best for Dungeon, I also had to make a safe home for some stuff like articles about monsters, which all of a sudden the strategy of Dragon became, we can't have articles about monsters in it anymore. And I'm like, well, man, I'll take those, I guess. I was trying to drive the circulation of my own magazine at that time, so I'll take it.
You go into the back of every one of these and they have all these
the campaign advice and
that's all because the idea was all that content was being seeded by Dragon. And so I'm no dummy, and I'm like, well, if you're going to throw it away, I'll just take it. But it ended up being kind of an academic thing because Chris didn't he moved on, I think, back to Wizards very shortly after the relaunch, and then Matt Cernit took over. He lasted only a few issues, and so very shortly I was in charge of both, and I was just like, forget some of this crap. I just never bought into that strategy, and so once it was my decision, I gutted it. But that's what you see there. And that, to some degree, and there's no question that there are more players who buy Dragon than Dungeon, right? I mean, it is I understand the logic behind I just thought it gave up too much of what Dragon had traditionally been and what the value I had found from it as a GM my whole life.
To the outside person like me just buying these every month, it was confusing why that happened. And also you had Living Greyhawk articles in Dungeon. You had the Harby article. You had the Shield.
Was that in Dungeon or was that in
Dungeon?
Yeah, see, it's because it should have been in the other magazine, but they
Yeah.
wouldn't let it go in there because of that
Yeah.
particular. Again, it didn't last very long, but that was kind of the idea, and I think the Dungeon relaunch worked really, really, really well, and I think the Dragon relaunch didn't really work as well.
But we're glad it came into either magazine, because I gladly bought both of them, and as long as it was in either of them,
the hardcore bought both of them. So at the end of the day, you didn't lose too much as a GM. But I just really wanted to make sure it's like, if all of a sudden there is literally no room for articles about new monsters, are we even, that ain't, and so anyway.
But look, so Eric, think about this. You've done something with this that that me, with my own campaign, I'm utilizing the information you put out there. So that alone is telling you hit the nail on the head by providing all that data. You're helping out the DM with his Greyhawk, and that's what this does. Besides telling a story, and besides having all these adventures, you put out, and another thing you've put out, you see these NPCs,
right? Super valuable. Just
you
to
see these NPCs, a lot of them in his.
Yep. Oh, right? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, come on. Now you're fast forwarding, and now I'm doing the same thing with that.
Right. So you're telling, and it's memorable, and that's a connection instead of just having all where adventures just don't have that connectivity. These do, and that's another thing I think is brilliantly done. So.
Thank you. I mean, it was really fun to do.
It is, and you're right. Like, how'd you have all that energy, man? Back in the day, I can't even imagine how. Now, here's the thing about this. Not only is your adventure in here.
Oh yeah, we got a Rob Kuntz level.
You got a Rob Kuntz level of Mar Castle in this. In this
poster map, and it's a pretty good issue. I think to me, that I'll always have a personal affection for 112, which is Mari Castle.
Yeah, we talked about it a little while ago.
It was like a jam of all my buddies and all my heroes all at once, and so that one has a really special place in my heart. But also, it's kind of an outlier. It's not. It's more of a module than it is like a standard issue of Dungeon magazine. But so if you're looking at the standard issues of Dungeon magazine, I'd say number 124 is probably one of my favorites, of course, because I'm heavily biased, having written 3/4 of it. But it just kind of all came together with some of the other component. What's the other adventure in there? Is there?
It's Eberron with Wyatt and Collins. I mean, that's
So I mean, we had a pretty good murderer's row of.
I'll say. Yeah, absolutely. It's just a fair. Oh, you're Left Coast. You're running through Moore Castle now. That's awesome. That's really cool. So as we scroll down here a little bit and we get through all the ads, and here's your background. The adventure begins. A sullen mining town called Diamond Lake. Perfect place. What a shithole. And you bring that up pretty good with also a mobster, Balabar Smenk, and all sorts of other things going on. Also, what I love is you bring out the corrupt Abel Carter coaching company, right, which you use later on too. I mean,
that's kind of an Erik Monaism that appeared in almost all my Greyhawk stuff.
Right. So that's your I love that because I have my own team. I have a rival one that I've used for years.
Oh, cool.
They go at each other. They actually war with each other. So
the Abel Carters are in. I think that they're the ones running the cart that gets set on the bridge in the opening encounter of Ruins. Of
yep,
Greyhawk.
Absolutely. Plus they're infiltrated
by
Ayus.
Yeah, and I think I described them in one of the articles I co-wrote with Dennis in Living Greyhawk Journal, maybe. But yeah, they were.
But they're in Diamond Lake too.
Oh yeah, they're
everywhere, which is great. So
them and the Seekers, they're everywhere I am. in Greyhawk usually.
Yes. Hey, John Blue Box, good to see you. Where is Gary Julian when you need him to have this wonderful commentary? I know he hasn't been feeling that great lately. So when we come on to the Whispering Cairn, I won't go over this line by line, Eric, but give us a synopsis of the story that you are setting here to begin off everything with the wonders of adventure number 1 in the Age of Worms. Thanks, John.
The story that I'm setting is, it is set in front of a pretty despicable backdrop, because the idea is, let's make a place people want to leave. That was
Yeah.
number one. And so before the campaign even begins, the default assumption is that the player characters are inhabitants of Diamond Lake who, for whatever reason, just want to move on. Whether that's for glory or for escape or what have you, doesn't really matter. And of course, Diamond Lake being in the Cairn Hills, it is surrounded by mostly depleted ancient tombs of a variety of different cultures, the oldest of which being the Wind Dukes of Akka. The adventure begins, so to speak, when a trio of higher level adventurers from the Free City visits town and makes their intentions to explore a prominent dungeon known as the Sturge Nest Cairn in town. And the player characters, being knowledgeable locals, know that is completely tapped out, but also have heard rumors about another cairn, the Whispering Cairn, where the youth of the town often dare each other to spend a night inside or what have you. And there have been some mysterious disappearances connected to that the player characters come to the conclusion that it is high time to explore that cairn before these interlopers from the Free City do it themselves. So that really is the kickoff of the campaign. The player characters venture into the Whispering Cairn and make discoveries there that will eventually lead them to being the heroes most suitable for defeating the advent of a terrible era known as the Age of Worms, that has been long prophesized, an era of decay and darkness and evil. And the player characters are the ones to prevent it from happening. And in the course of the first adventure, they'll explore the Whispering Cairn. They'll get to know the town of Diamond Lake. They'll get to know the rival adventurers and several other NPCs that will pull them through the rest of the campaign, not least being a local wizard and Patreon named Alustan, who, it just so happens, was the former apprentice of a wizard named Manzorian, who is one of the four things I had to change from wizards, but is pretty obviously supposed to be Tensor himself. So you get plugged into some of the, you're slowly removing degrees of separation from some of the most important movers and shakers in the campaign setting, even from the first adventure.
So, and you have another wonderful thing I like: multiple factions running around in this area to start off. So there's side quests that can happen at any time. Like a good DM can throw them off the trail, have them do something that may not even have to do with this campaign if they want to, and really stretch things out if they really want to, go into those depths. Plus, you have all these campaign seeds throughout the first couple pages. Here you have Greyhawk, talk about the Rod of Seven Parks. Here's the Wind Duke glyphs right here as well, which is neat. So, and so this is I don't know, Zosiel, right? The hero Zosiel, the architect Nadrock. While the Rod of Seven Parts is common currency among bards and dreamers, few specific details regarding Wind Duke culture, history, and writing remain. So, something I don't see much developed, like in today's terms, which I'd love to see someone bring some of this lore back beyond running Age of Worms. I think it would be pretty neat.
Yeah. I think that Wizards has probably done something with like Miska the Wolf Spider and the Queen of Chaos and stuff. I've seen some videos online, lore videos for D&D or something that played accidentally, where I'm like, oh, they took that little thing there. So I do think there's been some.
Okay, there has been some. Okay.
Yeah, I think, but I wouldn't anticipate there's been too much. So who knows? But playing with some pretty juicy lore there would be nice if someone paid attention.
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure it still was valid.
So, and here's your Whisper. Here's your Cairn. I mean, it's just it's one.
One of the things you scrolled past on page 21
Please,
there.
Let's do it.
Is that campaign seed Wind Duke glyphs sidebar.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives a knowledge DC chart from 10 to 25 and reveals various facts about the glyphs and some of the lore. And that goes anywhere from 10 being the glyphs don't seem to be formed from a common alphabet, although they are reminiscent of arcane symbols representing elemental air. So, any kind of fool can figure that out. But then 25, it gets into, it's a language called Vadi, which is from the Skip's Rod of Seven Parts adventure. Vadi is an an Orin word meaning Wind Duke and refers to the legendary Wind Dukes of Akka, who forged the Rod of Seven Parts. A book called The Chronicle of Chan, who's one of the elemental princes of good, I think, falsely attributed to a princess of elemental air, records a full roster of the Wind Dukes present at the Battle of Pesh and a general record of what took place there, yada, yada, yada. So the only reason I brought this up is that one of my pet peeves in adventure writing, and certainly in adventure publishing and editing, is the idea of like, okay, there's an empty room. 5,000 years ago, let me tell you all these details about what was in this room, but there's literally no way for the player characters to understand any of the historical context of the adventure. And so that's just all very interesting to the DM, but I always felt like it was kind of a ripoff that only one person at the table got to know the whole story of what was actually going on. So as I was going through this adventure, and you'll see it later on when you get into more of the Winduki parts near the end, it very explicitly giving player characters through the agency of their knowledge skills, their own personal observations and details from the adventure, much of which were enhanced by the fact that I'd actually play tested the adventure. And some of those questions came from my real players. Those things were all geared toward revealing as much of the story to the players as humanly possible. And I do find that in a lot of adventures, in particular sort of standard dungeon crawl adventures, if you will, the writer really loves being able to tell all this backstory and all this other garbage. But if there's no way for the players to access that information, it's basically just masturbation and isn't of much value to anyone other than the reader and the writer who's, you know, vomiting those words onto the page to hit their word count. So I very much want to vomit words onto a page, you know, but I want to make sure that those details have a naturalistic route into the minds of the people around the table. Otherwise, it's just a waste of everybody's time.
Wow, Dave.
Yep.
David Leonard did a musings post on the Wind Dukes of Akka. So there you go.
Oh,
all right,
cool.
and that was December 23rd, so it wasn't that long ago. Thanks, David.
Did they bother to read this adventure?
I would imagine.
I'm sure he
David
did.
Leonard, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Cool.
He is a scholar. He goes through and
See
he
him,
has a
Alvin?
long list of, let's see what he has to, sources.
It's gotta be. It's David.
Dungeon
David
Magazine 129. Let's see. Dragon Magazine 82, 167, 293, 94, 95, 99.
Yeah,
That's
all right.
Oh yeah, so he has a thesis. He has like a list of credential.
absolutely.
And where would one find
sources.
that article?
David, link it a second time if you don't mind.
Hang on a second. I posted it in our
it's Greyhawk
Zoom chat
Musings.
here.
It's
So
David
yeah.
Leonard's blog. So
Oh,
she does a
okay.
real good
Oh, it's a
job.
blog.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was confused because I
Yeah,
thought you said
I posted
it's a
in
business
our
thing.
chat here
I'm sorry.
too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
His blog.
I trust the fans to well, I shouldn't say that. I trust everyone equally, but it doesn't surprise me that a fan blog or something would go really, really deep, whereas, you know, sometimes
Oh yeah, he's
He
a
does- he is-
scholar of history, so to
Yeah.
speak. So
Well,
I
I
stick
know.
to geography. Yep. Mhm.
very well, sir.
So you got your Cairn, and you have. Tell us a little bit more, Eric, about your thought. It's a basic Cairn, but it's got a lot of surprises. I mean,
I mean, I guess the inspiration of the early few encounters is sort of Egyptian tombs that always had false tombs and trying to fool tomb raiders and things, and so I wanted to play with that idea a little bit. I also kind of liked the idea of the best dungeon crawls for me historically as a player and as a GM are ones that are nearby a source of civilization where you can make forays in and out of the dungeon. And while you're doing the dungeon stuff, which tends to be heavy on the tactics and the rulesy type of the game, then you'd have these periods where you could do things that are more appealing to folks who love role playing or just balancing it out for everybody, and that's by going into town and learning a little bit more about the environment outside the dungeon. And so I wanted to set up a system that would require at some point the players to kind of hit a dead end and leave the dungeon and go explore the town a little bit more, come back to the dungeon to get further. And so that was really, I would say, kind of the main impetus for this early stuff. I also did really appreciate that the very first session that my Paizo group played with it, there was that scene where the elevator thing comes up and all the swarm of beetles or whatever it was comes out, and it completely devoured Wes Schneider's character, and he died in like the one of the first fights in the entire campaign.
Uh-oh.
And that kind of appealed to me too, because I did want I think there was a feeling that some of the early I don't think it's fair, by the way, but there's a feeling that things were getting a little softened up. The idea, I remember at the time, kind of like, even for like an AD&D player, the concept of like a challenge rating that would largely be measured to the player's power, so that there was less of a chance that you go into a room and there's a thing 8 levels higher than you and you just got to learn to run sometimes. I didn't want to tell that lesson in a way that would like dissuade people from wanting to play, but I also wanted to make it very clear that this was more of a kind of a first edition style, like that you will die here if you're not incredibly careful, and if you don't think about this as kind of a puzzle as well as a story. If you're just going in as a story and you assume that your character is largely Teflon because the encounters are all going to be perfectly balanced to your level and everything, there's a lot of that. That's the nature of the game. But I did want to throw in some fairly nasty, devious surprises in there, and so there's quite a few of those things in the early days here in this adventure as well.
Traps are and all sorts of are always appreciated. Things that can really take out characters, and the artwork is fantastic too. And then you have this, you have your and you're highlighting the hand symbol here, which is part of the
clue.
Oh,
clue.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely, right there. It's really neat. Also, color. Nothing better than throwing in color schemes on things with the lanterns here. All the different. Reminds me of Tharsden. It reminds me of Shokanth too.
I am trying to think to what degree like the Dowd's Marvelous Lanthorn may have inspired some of those. If I read more carefully and really thought about it, there may be some connections there as well.
Yeah, it's but hey, we all get inspiration from those older classics all the time.
Well, and you were aiming to do classic D&D in the sense.
Yeah, and even if it's just something as simple as that what is it, Jeff Easley illustration of
Drelsna.
I think that the lanthorn is hanging on a chain, awesome. And I think that honestly is, I think, probably the inspiration. I also really wanted to do the idea. I don't know why I get these like images in my head and I just like really want to play them out. And so I think one of the if I'm remembering correctly, the idea is that there's these offshoot tunnels off the main room, so if you look at this room right here, there are these offshoot tunnels. And then at the end of each offshoot, there's a chain upon which, a thing like that, a lantern like that would hang. And, but the chains go so far up that it's dark up there. I kind of thought, what a cool idea to actually have a passage up near the top. So you had to climb up the chain to get down there. And that's all. I just thought that would be a neat idea, and so that was part of it too. Some of it's just visual stuff that I want to get in.
Unless you have a dark elf who's just going to levitate up there in the party.
Well, and that's cool too. I mean, it's like I do love those kind of challenges in an adventure where it's solvable, and I actually like them when they're solvable even by more methodologies than the ones I can think of. Because I kind of like it when the players are like, we've outsmarted the module, and it's like, sure have, kid, keep trying. It's like we're all winning when everyone's having fun, and when people feel like they're one step ahead of the dungeon or whatever, that can be really fun for the players. And so I like to have some of that in there as well. A similar thing when we got to Sean's adventure and you got to actually fight a bunch of the lizard folk. I think we kind of came to the realization like the players are like 6th level at this point. They now have stuff like fireball and lightning bolt that they didn't have before. Let's give them a couple of big combats against weaker foes to like really let them flex their muscles and kick some ass. Lord knows Mike Merles and I put them through the dungeon grinder, in the previous 2 adventures. So you got to there's an ebb and flow to it, and you got to let the players win, and sometimes they win by being smarter than you, and that is okay. That's a feature now.
Was this started for first through thirds or
first through third?
First through third. So okay. So you could be any of those levels, and you have to tweak it a little bit. So the synopsis of what happens. I know you have the layer of the architect here, and the layer of, what do they find out running through the Whispering Cairn? What is the
Well,
end game?
Well, eventually, well, first of all, they got to just get into it, and
Yeah,
that's
right.
an adventure in and of itself. But by the time they do that, they find a way to access the actual dungeon. There's a couple of sub levels under that. The level I just showed, the lair of the architect, and then the lair of the laborers, and those were places where people lived when they were building the cairn back in ancient days. Those are pretty degraded parts of the dungeon with mold, and part of them's flooded. There's a really insidious way to get paralyzed by a ghoul while you're underwater. I thought that was
I love that.
fun little trick to pull on people. And then eventually you get your way into the true tomb, and eventually you pretty sure you end up with a piece of the rod of seven parts.
Yeah, the law part, is that it?
Yeah, and then you end up also having to go back and forth into the town to get the lanterns in order to fully open up the dungeon. And in doing that, you end up becoming embroiled in controversy and intrigue with a number of people, not least of which is a corrupt mine owner called Balabar Smenk, which is probably one of my favorite names I ever came up with, just because you can tell
That's
what
cool. Yeah.
And the feral dog as well, right?
Yeah, and then that's kind of the bar where his rowdies hang out, and you can go and deal with them. And so by the time the adventure ends, you're kind of better known to some of the movers and shakers in town. You have accumulated a decent amount of wealth. You fought that guy that you're showing right there, who's a necromancer called
deranged
Phil,
necromancer,
who has a connection to the family of a child ghost that you meet in the dungeon, and is probably one of the creepier scenes that I've written when you go to have dinner with Filge, and that's kind of the long and the short of it. By that time, you've got some enemies, you've got some friends, you've got some rivals, you've got an inkling as to what's going on. In Filge's lair, you find a worm of Caius that he's been studying, and that's where you start to learn about the age of worms, and you're going to learn a lot more about that over the course of the next 2 of 12 adventures. But this thing is really about getting the group together, giving them a common cause, giving them the opportunity to kind of learn how to work with one another within the context of a dungeon that also provides important historical background for the campaign to come, and then hints at some of the big parts of the campaign and some introductions to NPCs that are going to be important throughout the entire thing.
And not only do you get the adventure, but then there's the entire Diamond Lake backdrop as well.
Yeah.
And its entire to fill out the town.
It's quite a thing. It's interesting to read your own writing 15 plus years after you did it, and it's like my first take was like, oh, thank God, I think it's pretty good. But then my second take was like, well, some of it's pretty fucking dark, Eric. Like holy the opening. It's funny. I was just showing my girlfriend earlier, because I was refamiliarizing myself with some of this content earlier today, and I was like, I had to read the first 2 paragraphs of the Diamond Lake entry, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know that all this would fly in 2023 necessarily. And she's like, yeah, good job, Edgelord, or whatever. And I was like, thanks. And then I read, and then I'm like looking at it, I took it back, and then I read the 3rd paragraph, which is, in a tower-flanked fortress across the shadowy square, filthy men with nothing to lose shout hymns to St. Cuthbert, clutching to their idealism and principles like cornered animals. Their wild-eyed chief minister smiles as he draws a cat of 9 tails across his bare back, awash in their adulation in the spirit of his god. But it's just another night in Diamond. And it's like even the 3rd paragraph was pretty turned up to 11.
And those are the good guys.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think there's another, as I was looking at this, and as I was thinking about it, and sort of thinking also about how I don't know, times have changed or whatever. I'm not really sure. We can get into that, I guess, if we want. But there's another influence to this stuff that I think is worth keeping in mind, and it's probably because of the adjacency to the city of Greyhawk. But I think Gary's novels actually had a pretty important thematic influence over this adventure path, in particular his first 2 novels, which is an official thing. Were really the only thing I could even pull anything from.
Saga of Old
I-
City and the Artifact
just
of
the
Evil. Yeah.
darkness of it, just
Mhm.
the fact of the matter of like the city of Greyhawk as described by Gary Gygax is not a fun place to live.
Yeah,
not
it's a
at all.
grim.
You know, and
Yeah.
I always, you know, my background, for good or ill, I'm a child of my era, you know, and so my background in D&D was some of the same influences that underlie AD&D, you know, and in fact I would then use like the Appendix N as like a reading list to better understand D&D, and then that became even more baked in. And so, you know, my influences are things more like Robert Howard and Jack Vance, and those things have a pretty, like, the world is a dangerous and dark place. And when it comes to an adventuring life, that had, especially in 2005, my mindset was very much in that mode. So it was like, let's give people a shitty place they want to leave. But then if we're going to make it shitty, let's make it really shitty. Like, let's have dogfighting pits that people get pushed into. And let's have, you know, the good guys are all flagellants, and, you know, just like some creepy shit. And so that was really key to I think the City of Greyhawk stuff, the Gygax tones come through as I'm reading through this Diamond Lake stuff, because I wanted to make, even though it was a peripheral town, I wanted to make it feel kind of true to the themes that I saw as kind of underlying D&D and Greyhawk. I don't know if I feel the same way about that now. I don't know that I would say, oh, those are the only themes. I think, you know, folks who've been raised on a little different influences, you know, I've noticed a lot of times it's like I remember actually when we were working on the Absalom book for Pathfinder, which is a big city guide that I did a lot of revision and work on. There was something about, oh, you know, and on this day there's capital punishment. It's Noose Wheel Day, which was like one of the things from one of our old adventures. And I said, you know, crowds of hundreds of people will come to watch like a spectator sport and cheer on the, you know, the hangings or whatever. And someone on my staff, and this isn't a criticism of them, it was kind of an eye-opening moment, was kind of like, well, it doesn't really want to make me want to live there. You know, I'm kind of repulsed by it. My first thought was just like, yeah, you know, this is how public executions worked in the past. People came and knitted and handed out coffee and enjoyed
it was
and B, you know, I guess my perspective on any big city is that it's going to be so jaundiced and corrupt at the top anyway, that I wanted to show some visceral expressions of that. But I think that people who come up maybe a little bit younger, I don't know, maybe I'm just sounding like an old man here, but like, I do think that there's different perspectives on stuff that are informed by different types of fantasy and different types of themes. And I think that there is a mindset of player that I sometimes associate with a younger group. And again, no value judgment here at all, but I think those people are looking for sort of life affirming fantasy or like hopeful stuff. And it strikes me as I'm reading through Diamond Lake that it is emphatically not a very hopeful place. It is a shithole by design, and it is a place where you're likely to get your throat slashed. So you got to watch out.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I designed it. Would I design it that way today? Probably. Would I design it that way today, you know, for the Pathfinder audience and things like that? I don't know.
Maybe.
Probably not.
Well,
you know, but that's part of the advantage of being around for a long time, is you can kind of take a look at how things evolve, I guess.
And also I think that that depends on the theme, meaning some games and settings should have the whole range. Some settings should definitely not have this at all, so people can pick and choose, because I think some groups want to play this, and if everyone
I know
with it, then
I mean, it's obvious that they do. And but again, I think if you look at it, I think that even though this was in 2005, it's still in some way, I think the setting still, and this is even this post Living Greyhawk, there's still that, I think, From the Ashes brought in that kind of more dark sort of realism type of stuff. And I think that that's still very evident in this 2005 era approach to the same stuff. I want to talk about those guys when you get a chance.
Yes. Well, you know, there at least two of them I know are in expeditions. Are all three of them in the expeditions? They may be, but you know, one's the Dragon Chess champion, right?
Right.
Yeah. They're very neutral, Cairn neutral, all three, if I recall. Let's talk about them.
Well, no, Kellic is neutral evil. The other two are straight up neutral.
Okay, yeah. Erik and Tira. Okay, yeah. Erik, Tira.
Yeah.
Kellic,
So, again, the idea of like, let's really revel in the history of D&D and just the fun elements of it. One of the things that I always thought was really fun about D&D when I was a little kid were the cartoon ads that they ran. And I don't mean ads for the D&D cartoon, but I mean the ads that they ran in comic books and things that looked like a comic. And they were often illustrated by Dave Trampier. I think Jeff D might have done a couple of them, but they were really fun. And they were like, here's a scene from a dungeon. And many of them featured the same group of adventurers in those comic book exploits. And it was Tira, Kellic, and Erik. I got the names from those ads, the look of them. That is the adventuring party from those old comic book ads for Dungeons and
Oh,
I
Dragons.
did not know
like in
that.
1981
that
or
is
something
so
like that.
cool.
Yeah, so I just thought that'd be kind of a fun thing to pull
Wow.
forward. And,
Yeah.
That's great, Erik.
and so so
Did not
even
know
your rival adventurers have a pedigree with the game that goes back to my grade school years, I guess. And so there you have
That's
it.
That's paying true homage.
Secret
there.
origin of
Mhm.
the rival adventurers in Age of Worms is that they are the official marketing party of Dungeons and
It is-
Dragons advertising strategy for 2 or 3 years. When I was
It
a
is,
kid.
Casey. That's a deep Easter egg, man. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate
I
that.
sort of figured people knew that, but I guess maybe I was a little too subtle for its own good. But that is like the definition of an Easter egg, I guess. Now,
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Erik. We find tidbits out years later on stuff.
Yeah.
We found out this here. We have found out how Monty Hall DM was coined.
Yeah, how
We found
Monty
out-
Hall
I mean, we
gaming
found out
and-
all
yeah.
sorts of great
Right,
things.
right.
Yep.
That's a new one. Like everyone needs to go, oh my gosh, wow. So
Yeah, people have been hiding little secrets in D&D from the very beginning, and it
Oh
is
yeah.
Yeah. That's a
some of them.
fantastic one.
One thing we'll have to get to someday. I always thought that maybe the best approach would be a blog, and I still do. I just can't imagine having the time to sit down and write it. But I would at some point. So we did this like crazy throughout all of Age of Worms. Was the whole Prince of Red Hand
Mhm.
adventures inspired by one of those around the Flan-S articles, that are like army reports, from
Yep.
Gygax, like Sorcerer's Scroll kind of era. And there's just lots and lots of stuff like that. And a couple years after this, when Wizards contacted us, by us I mean myself, James Jacobs, and Jason Bullman, to write the ruins of the Expedition of the Ruins of Greyhawk adventure. That was around the time things were also cratering, in the professional relationship between Paizo and Wizards at that point in time. Just, I don't know about cratering, but just like all of a sudden a real lack of communication. In fact, a good example of that is you'd mentioned that the Shackled City book had just come out when this issue was coming out. The expectation was always, and then we'll follow that up with an Age of Worms hardcover, but somewhere along the line they just kind of stopped talking to us, and then very shortly thereafter they pulled back a whole bunch of their licenses to launch 4th edition, and that ultimately, yada yada, different podcasts, but that ultimately had us create Pathfinder. The idea was we were going to publish the other adventure path, so on and so forth. By the time we started Expedition, I kind of knew it was the end. I honestly, all of us went into that book saying, maybe not, but let's just kind of assume this is our last official D&D thing we ever write. Let's assume this is the last time we ever get to touch Greyhawk in any official capacity, and let's just have as much fun with it as we can. And so I had a lot of fun with it. And in particular, in the City of Greyhawk sections and the College of Wizardry, or the other one, I always get them confused, the one where you meet Mordenkainen, there's all kinds of Easter eggs from like obscure dragon creature collection articles and everything like that. So I always kind of wanted to do an annotated version of that as a series and kind of explain all the different Easter eggs, because they are multitudinous. I mean, the Rickard Damaris is running, it gets caught in a attack on a carriage that's run by the Abel Carter carriage. There's just a lot of that kind of stuff. So it would be fun to really go a deep dive on some of this stuff. But this is an example, these 3 adventures.
You should put together the list and live stream it here.
Maybe we will one day.
Or whatever, yeah.
Because that would be just brilliant.
You run us through puppets, and then I'll do that.
It's going to, Erik. We'll diverge for a second here. Your characters are too high level. I'm going to run
No. You can
I'm going to run you through you and Ed and whoever else is part of that group.
Yeah,
Puppets on steroids.
I can't wait. What's better? If the only thing better than a low-level Freddy McKrueger is a high-level Freddy McKrueger.
Yeah, exactly.
They will
Plus,
be
I
like
have
real dolls.
I have
Yeah.
a secret one of my own. I'm throwing in there. That's from. You want to talk about an Easter egg? I'm not giving anything else away, but we may have a miniature for it, so you'll see. Oh, it's gonna be great.
I hope you're not going to bring in Pop and Farsh, the Pillsbury Golem.
No, this is better.
Oh, good.
This is way better.
God.
How could you ever be better than Pop?
But it's gonna. Yes, hopefully we'll raise thousands of dollars on that show.
Hope so.
But yeah, we'll have Venerian Ford and Ravalantar and whoever else joins us that night. We're still trying to get the word out there. By the way, Eric, if you have any, we're trying to get as many large names into as many streams as possible too. I don't want to eat them all up in mine, but we want to spread out some of the other ones. So for that fundraiser, let me just. Whoop, that's the wrong leg. Please, everyone, we got to break $20,540 this year. So I got to figure out. It's a lot of money, but that's only like 5 weeks away. 5-6 weeks away, so we're excited about that. 10 streamers, 10 this year.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, I will definitely be running puppets part 2 or puppets. Puppets
part 2 still puppeting.
It'll be a blast. So the first adventure, Whispering Cairn, I'm assuming. Is that your pinnacle adventure you've written, or is there something?
I mean, I think that in terms of, well, I don't know. I mean, it's the one that I've written under my own byline that is not co-written by other people or not a chapter in another thing like the module or the dungeon levels I did for like Thorn Keep or Ebon Spire in Pathfinder. Every word of this is mine, and that's not necessarily true of some of the more collaborative elements, even stuff like Expedition we were just talking about. I had 2 great authors on that, and but yet again, but it's a magazine article, so it never really came out as its own adventure, so I don't really know. It's the one that I think has probably been played the most, and it's the one that I've gotten the most positive feedback from, and in some ways, I mean, honestly, I think it's the one I put the most work into, just based on reading it the last couple of days and being like, how many more pages this is there? Oh my god, so it it's probably I don't know, I'm proud of all my children, but it's definitely up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what other people brought to it after me, of course, just elevates it even higher. So it's hard to pick, I guess, but I'm proud of it. I like it.
Yeah.
What
a great
an excellent, like I said, these supplements, I'm just going through them real quick. It makes things it's easy to find it. You don't have to photocopy that page or print that page out in a PDF. You can just come right here. If you can get a hold of these, these are really helpful, for everything. Look at that. There's even a Seeker's Lodge here. Gary just hopped on. So Seeker's Lodge. Yeah. In Diamond Lake. Lots of
Kellic is a seeker. Eli Tomarast is a seeker.
Yeah.
Seekers are like the what if Belloc from Raiders of the Lost Ark had a fan club, or a adventuring society. It's just a bunch of people to meet while you're in dungeons who might not have the same exact motivation as you. And they were very tied in with the 8-part star thing that we put in Mari Castle, and that I was playing with a little bit in the early days of Living Greyhawk. In fact, is incorporated into the logo of Living Greyhawk. So there you go.
But by the way, let's see if you can pick this up. All right, quick off of beaten path. We got Eric here. Let's have some fun.
Okay.
Here is our logo by Anna, called Legends.
Okay.
For this fundraiser. Tell us all what. All 7, Eric, on there. There are 7 legends, or 7 or 8 legends. What do you think?
All right.
I
can get one of them for sure. Under the letter L is Ayuz the Evil squatting on his
Yes, there's Ayuz.
Yep.
Yes.
On his bones.
Yes. Tough, huh?
Yeah, it's a little.
How about
hard.
this one? How about this one here? This one's pretty easy.
That is Morden Kanan from the cover of Living Greyhawk as a tear,
yes.
maybe.
Yep.
Yes. How about this one?
And that is
Who's the
one.
person folding their arms?
It's
like...
it's drawn by Ken Franks. It's one of sketches.
Oh,
from
okay. So then it's
Ken
going to be.
Franks.
Is it another member of the Circle of
Yes.
Eight?
Yes, it is.
Well,
Is it-
he's not a circle member anymore.
That's true. He's not anymore, but he was. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good clue.
Yes, it is from Return of the Eight.
Who's in the Circle of Eight then? Who is no longer now? It's not Rary, is it?
No,
Nope, it's not Rary.
It's Tensor.
Yeah, it's
Tensor.
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 Yep,
Yep.
he's
Tensor's
the-
not in the
he
Circle of Eight
stands
anymore?
like
No,
this.
he's like, I don't need
and-
part of
He
the
got
Circle of
turned
Eight.
into a blue monster and sent to the moon or something.
Mhm.
Well, this
Okay.
one is tough. Anna put this one in. This one's really tough. That's someone's
Yeah,
hair.
that's real. That's really tough.
That's a hair.
Yeah.
That's a head.
Yep.
Jalarzi Salivarian's
That's
hair.
a good get.
Nope.
That's a good
That's
get.
a
You're
good one, but
close.
no, it's not. Yep.
Yeah, that's
It's
a good.
it's
You're
more
close. No.
overweight than Jalarzi.
More
Yeah.
overweight than Jalarzi. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And it's a woman.
No, it's a male.
Nope, it's not.
Oh,
it's
it's a male.
Yeah.
Yep.
Overweight. Like
Is
skinny.
it? No, it's not Wastry. You should have
No.
done Wastry.
I
it's
know.
not Western.
Yeah, that would be a good one
No,
too.
it's not
If I'd
Western.
be-
Yep.
He likes
Uh,
cakes. He likes a lot of cakes.
Yeah.
He likes
Mhm.
cakes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's Otto.
Who is it? Oh, I love
Yep.
Otto. I have a whole.
It's
How
Otto.
about this one?
And then in the middle, there's
Yeah,
that
two
one's
two of them.
hard for me
It's
to tell.
two. It's
Oh,
two.
Yeah,
it's
zoom in a little bit.
Oh
you
no,
can
I
see
know what
more.
it is. It's my favorite. It's Igwilv and Grazit.
Yes,
Yes.
from the cover.
21.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
My
That's
favorite
a-
dungeon cover, I think.
Alright.
Yep.
And
mhm.
then this one here.
Yep.
Is another. Yeah.
I don't know.
That one's tough.
Because
Yeah, you already.
Yeah.
It depends on. She
Galarzi?
might be.
Yeah. It's
She might actually be mentioned twice,
Yeah.
depending on what portion of the lore how you interpret it. She might
Oh,
be.
it's Tasha.
It's
Yes,
Tasha.
it's Tasha.
Okay.
Yep.
And then
mhm.
this
And
one,
then
this one is like around the head.
Oh yeah, it's
one
a
of
cape
those
or like a
cape around
hood
the
over.
head.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that's a
it's
tough-
but
that's
it's
the toughest
very tough one. Yeah.
That's tough.
mhm.
Here, think hand.
Vecna.
No,
Think
Fist.
hand?
Think fist.
Yeah, hand.
Oh, fist.
fist. Yeah. mhm.
I don't know, guys.
Clenching fist. It's Big B.
It's
Big
Zoom.
B.
Big B.
Big B. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Yes,
kinda
he was depicted with
Yeah,
the
so
hood on.
I think
That was
Anna
the
did a
best picture
brilliant-
I could find of it.
Everyone,
Yeah.
Anna did a brilliant job with this banner.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank
Brilliant
you. Yeah,
job
it
for
was-
this fundraiser. And
Yeah,
there
I
you go.
took, it was
So,
legends. So I found iconic images of things from the Greyhawk campaign and
Yeah.
and made silhouettes out of them. So
I'm very honored that an idea that I came up with, which is let's do a romance cover featuring Grazit embracing Igwilv,
yeah. Mhm.
is seen as so iconic that you put it at the center.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic, and it also fits perfect. I got Graz's eyes in the center with M there. So yeah, I love that part. So
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Plus
It
the-
is interesting. Of all the things that we had some say in, it's interesting that one of the ones that seems to have kind of hooked is the whole Tasha Igwilv deal.
A little
which we
too
really
much.
threw in kind of at the end. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where it's been taken since, but that's
Right off
interesting.
the cliff.
You never know what's
Yeah.
gonna get picked up and what's gonna get kind of forgotten or what's even
Yep.
gonna get the first time around. So it's interesting.
So just wanted to throw that out there for everyone and look at all the channels there. Phoenixy, Fabled 42, Wiley, Hobbit, Predators, Rejects, Blue Box, here, Troller Games, Carlos, Superior Adventure Guild, Gruck Reborn doing adventures, and Phantom NJ. Yeah, so far, that's who we got involved.
Yep.
So there's some wonderful stuff coming up. Thanks, Skagath. No monks being discussed again, so
Hello.
you can hang
Yep.
out all the way from Sweden there as long as you
Mhm.
so choose.
Yep.
So thanks, good to see you. So Eric, back to a little break there as
Yes, that
back-
was a fun interlude.
yeah, back to anything in synopsis on Dungeon 124. Anna, you and I will go back and talk about the Kuntz stuff and other things.
Oh
you know,
yeah, we can. Yeah, now we
Yeah.
need to concentrate on the
Yeah.
important stuff here.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that was.
I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it. It was really enjoyable to go back to. You sometimes
Yeah.
look back and what's it going to be like? I mean, this was
Something
almost 20 years
yeah.
ago. That was a long time
Like
ago.
Yeah.
yeah,
But I think it holds up. I think it holds up.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
yeah.
yeah.
definitely.
Oh
Yep.
my gosh, yeah. Now I tried. I tried to weasel. Mike Morrill says he may play in the fundraiser if he's allowed to. Okay, so I've
that'd be
already
great.
I've already talked
Yeah.
to Mike.
That will be
And
cool.
I said, by the way, Mike, we're talking about your adventure tonight. But I couldn't get him to come on. And they're not allowed to.
Technically, I guess you're talking about it the next issue, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So as we go to 125, let's see if we can get through the first 3.
Or are we talking about 125 too?
Yeah, why not?
Today?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I haven't read it in 20 years.
Oh,
so
okay. Well, you know what? Then we'll save it. We'll stay on one. We'll stay here then. We'll
Yeah.
stay. We'll stay here. We'll
I'm
stay.
happy to contribute my feeble memory to.
Yeah. Are we doing auctions? It's not auctions MPL. This is what happens. Top donator gets their pick. Last year it was Kafir's map. The Greyhawk map. Let me show you this. This was donated to me by Gamescape 3D, my friend Jeremy. Wow, it's a simple player's handbook, first edition. All right, it's not even one of the earlier editions, but it's signed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. Okay. So if you were the top donator, you can get that as one of the complimentary gifts. I have like 7, 8 sponsors, so there you go. So, question: what made Erik choose Caius as the big bet? You missed that, or Gary? Malvin says it was his
early.
idea. Yeah. Yeah. So you want to elaborate on the Erik? Elaborate on all the deity connections. How about that? Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's elaborate there.
The deity connections. What do you mean?
Like because you got Caius, Vecna, the Eben.
Oh yeah, the
Dracothra is
Eben
kind of-
Triad.
Eben Triad, yeah.
Erroneous, or no, it's Hextor, Erathnel, and Vecna, I think. If I'm being totally honest, I thought that was pretty dumb.
Okay.
I wouldn't. I'm not sure. Like, again, guys, some of this stuff has fallen out my ears after all these years. But like, is Vecna even a god? I'm not really sure.
Well, you have Vecna and Dragothra are these that kind of touch into that realm a little bit, maybe.
Erik,
Yeah.
it's like this.
Yeah,
People can't leave well enough alone. So he should be just a powerful lich, but
that's where I'm at in my head, but I'm not sure I haven't like directly contradicted that in the past somehow.
Right.
What I think is that the gods that comprise the Eben Triad were actually dictated by Shackled City before I had anything to do with the magazine. So I think that the Vecna part of that, I don't know. That was just one of the few surprises as I was reading through this. I was like, well, I didn't remember that Vecna was part of the Eben Triad, but clearly he was. I just can't remember why at this point, and I think it was just because they were looking for 3 random evil gods in the.
Okay.
But I don't quote me on that. James may know better than I, or Mike. Maybe has something to do with his adventure. I can't really remember that. That was the one thing as I was going through this, and I'm like, what? I shouldn't have done that, and I think so. The answer is I don't think I did. I think it was previously established.
Gary says Vecna lives made him a demigod. The adventure.
I don't doubt that at all, and that makes sense. But again, still, to me, like, what the hell does Vecna have to do with Erathnel and Hextor, which is nothing? And I think I don't know who I would put in there instead, but it's like I'm just not so sure.
Wastry, no, there's nothing to do.
I know that name came to mind, but no. I don't. Now that I'm thinking about it, like, can you do Wastry in 2023? Is that
That
God is explicitly a racist against demi-humans?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's my
Good
favorite.
luck with that. No, I bet.
He's more than my favorite. He's just.
I just think a couple things. The phrase "bath time for the hopping prophet" is maybe my favorite sentence.
Oh, the adventure card in Greyhawk City box set.
Yeah, that just makes me laugh in and of itself.
Yeah.
The drawing of him is hilarious. The Jeff Easley drawing from the old Dragon articles.
Yep,
I think it was
absolutely
hilarious. The fact that he's this little like Toad Prince guy who carries around a pole arm, I think is hilarious.
It's a glaive.
Yeah,
Yep.
And then he's called the Hammer of the Demi-Humans, but he uses a glaive. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I still like it. There's just a lot I like about that character because he's so delightful, and he's kind of comedic. Look at that. I mean, like, how do you can't be that scared. He's got sort of to go on a Dragonlance tangent for a second. He's got kind of a Viewmaster Toad aspect to him that's particularly appealing. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised. So if I'm thinking about just like, how would I role play Wastry? It does, I'll make a quick observation here if I can find it. The villain, one of the villains of this adventure, who you don't deal a ton with in this adventure, but certainly was like a fixture of my campaign, is this guy,
Balabor Schmank,
Schmank. And I think I was shooting for a kind of similar thing to Wastry, just like kind of a squat, sort of comedically evil.
Right,
schnook.
but yeah, a schnook. That's a good word, right? Absolutely. I'm looking for his picture here. I think he's in the he's right
He's in
here.
the diamond.
There you
He's
go.
right there.
There you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's,
He's 7th level, so he's nothing. No one to
he's
trifle
a
with.
badass. You know,
Yeah.
you can't mess with him as a first level guy. He's
No.
got dire apes for pets, you know. So but he was a particularly hilarious character. And in fact, my in-house campaign fell apart after the Champions Belt adventure. I think maybe we played a little bit of the next one, but then just a couple of people left the company. It just got hard to continue. I think the magazines got canceled. That was one of the reasons. So I didn't have as much
Yeah.
put into gaming. But he was a distinctive character in the campaign, and there's a part in the Champions Belt where they'd just done some big fight and they had kind of defeated some bad guy or something, and then from the crowd, you know, they hear his very distinctive voice, "Oh, heroes of Diamond Lake," or whatever. And so he made a triumphant appearance, and I think that might have been the final session of the Paizo Age of Worms campaign, was the return of the much hated Balabar Smank.
Yeah, as Gary says, you can smell the smank on the guy. Exactly. I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, just the name kind of was repulsive.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great name.
I think it's important. Something I really try to do, and I don't know if I'm successful in any stretch of the imagination, but I hope I am. And that is, when I'm naming NPCs, I want to come up with things that are fun to say, not things with 8 apostrophes that are hard to understand how to say, but things that and not things that rhyme with swear words, so your dumb players are constantly just like laughing and making fun of your NPC, but just things that are fun to say. Because, you know, this is a game that is done through communications, and you might as well kind of chuckle when you're
and this name both rolls off the tongue easily, and even for me as a non-native English speaker, and it's still that kind of corrupt connotation to it easily.
Yeah. Oh, good,
so,
good. Yeah. Yep. That was kind of the mouthfeel, you know, to use a wine term is like, I don't know about this. So so hopefully that was effective. But
we've already burned through 90 minutes, so let's finish 124 at least. How's that sound?
Yeah, sure.
Tell us about we had Mark Castle, which you said 112. It's like your ode to. It's like your the pinnacle of bringing together some legendary minds. And then Rob says, "Well, I got extra stuff." Is that what happened, or because you have this great adventure here?
Kind of. I think that my association with Rob goes back a long time, to probably the Council of Greyhawk, Earth Journal era, where he kind of could come out of the woodwork and had some small articles. He'd sent me an article on the Blue Wizard of Greyhawk, or some Greyhawk wizard, I forget his name. Just a couple of things. And at that point in time, anyone associated with the original campaign coming online was just like, "Oh, tell us more, let us feel the hem of your dress," kind of a thing. Yeah. And might still be that way to some degree, but so I had a long association with Rob. And actually, now that one of the things I love about the show is you ask me questions about stuff I haven't thought about in years. Great. And there's actually an entire story that I didn't even realize when I started answering your question.
That's great.
Wow. Awesome.
Wow. And boy, maybe this even tells you how times have changed, because it is maybe literally impossible to see some of these personalities coalescing in the way that I was trying to get them. So remember when I said that one of the impetuses for Age of Worms was me as a relatively young creative just trying to kick ass as much as humanly possible. I had this desire to really make a mark and really do something meaningful. And that goes back even before Age of Worms, when I was the publications coordinator for the RPGA network, editing Polyhedron and Living Greyhawk Journal magazine. At the time, this is fun to think about because context is coming back like
awesome.
But at the time, you may recall that as a benefit of RPGA membership, you got a free adventure every year. One that I'm reminded of is called Wand of Archael that we put out. Friday Tristor, which was the Greyhawk one. So at the time, the assumption was every year as a portion of your membership dues, you would get the magazine that you subscribe to, but you would also get a module. And that was mostly a like early Wizards era thing. That lasted maybe 6 years, but was very much in play when I was given the job. In fact, I'm guessing one of the reasons that my title was global publications coordinator and not editor of Polyhedron was because they knew A, we were going to launch a new magazine, Living Greyhawk Journal, and B, that I would also be in charge of all these modules. So, and any other kind of publishing things that came out of the RPGA at the time. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, we've got a Greyhawk campaign. I've got the budget and the strategic plan for a free adventure every year. I need content to do those adventures. I did have access at that time. It was a very cool thing. I had access to the handful of drawers that had the complete, and I use that in very loose terms, archive of RPGA modules that had ever been put out. This was pre-PDF, folks. So we're talking about literal printouts in hanging file folders going way back to nearly the beginning. Not to the beginning, to be clear. There were some real RPGA tournament style treasures that we're not in that file cabinet, but there were a lot of really interesting things. Some of the first Living City adventures that ever came out, some of the pretty interesting D&D opens and things like that. I had found the adventure called The Fright at Tristor by Keith Polster that I thought would be really fun to tighten up, but I didn't really have a huge list of other Greyhawk focused adventures to kind of republish. And up to that date, most of the adventures that were published under that RPGA program were previously tournament scenarios. Not always, but mostly. So I had a kind of a dearth of great options, going forward. And I knew we wanted to support the Living Greyhawk campaign. And as only kind of an audacious, how old would I have been? 24-year-old kid. Did not by any stretch of the imagination consider myself a kid at age 24, but now I was like, well, we should do is Castle Greyhawk. Why not every year we publish a new level of Castle Greyhawk? And why don't I work with Gary? And why don't I work with Rob? And why don't we just do this? Let's find a way to do this. Now, looking back, I'm like, oh my God, you ignorant little kid. You were like a child editor in a sub basement of this thing. Like, what the hell were you even thinking? But that was my objective. And I had extensive conversations with Gary.
So how far
I had
did that
extensive
go?
conversations with Dale, and I had extensive conversations with Rob. And it was something that could have happened. But Gary, unfortunately, at the time, I felt unfortunate, but I totally get it. He said, well, I'll do it, but I want royalties on it. But Wizards was like adamant against doing royalties. And it wasn't even like one of those things where I was like, oh, Gary wants royalties. Let me run that up the flagpole to the top to see if they'll approve it, because the people at the top still didn't know who the hell I was at that point. This was before they realized who I was when they tried to kill the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, and then they knew who I was. But at the time, I had no power whatsoever. So me going like, hey, can you change the company policy? They wouldn't laughing out of the room. So that really hit a death point when it was like, oh, if you want to give Gary a deal that is fundamentally different than all of the other deals that they give creative people at the company, then sure. And it's like, well, okay, I get it, but it's probably not going to work. And even then there were also concerns just about, how much time it would take and yada, yada. I'd have to go back and look at the timeline of this to see how it intersected with like Castle Zagig and some of the other sort of castle stuff that was going on at the time. I have a feeling this was before that, but
this is before it probably by 8 years, 5 to 8
okay,
years.
well, there you go. I'm an old man.
I think so.
But I really don't want to make some kind of statement in one of these things that like I'm all like, and I'm 100% sure that's how it worked, and someone comes out at the woodwork and goes, no, it's not. So like, take it. This is all memory and everything, right? But so the idea is we can't do Castle Greyhawk, for very understandable reasons. It was probably only out of extreme youth and ignorance that I even thought I could pull it off. And so, but as part of that, we'd started talking to Rob about, working on a project like that. And so we were very much in contact with Rob Kuntz, who was a lot more eager to, Gary had a lot of other stuff on his plate. Gary was Gary. Gary was not. My impression was that Gary was not in the active habit of writing Dungeons and Dragons support material at that point in time in his life.
Understood.
And whereas I think Rob was kind of getting reconnected to the community and really excited to share some of his stuff, and also perhaps solidify his role, a little more as like he was the co-DM. But I don't know. People on Greyhawk knew that. People on AOL knew that. But did the wider D&D community know, who Rob was? I don't know. So I suspect he wanted to help solidify his place in the narrative, and I had tremendous respect for what he brought to the table, and from working with him a little bit on non-official stuff through Earth Journal and just getting to know him a little bit. Rob's got a really unique creativity. We could do a whole hour on. We can't do a whole hour on things I wouldn't praise Rob about, but I could. So I'm trying to kind of like say it's a plus and a minuses sometimes, but the plus is, and just to give an example, so no one says, what do you mean? Is he a horrible person? No, what I mean is Rob was 30 years out of date in the lingua franca of Dungeons and Dragons. So he would write something for you that was kind of quasi even AD&D, and then we would have to do a heroic thing to kind of like get it to the right format and, So the editing, Rob, was always a little bit tricky for reasons that were not fully under Rob's control. Again, not trying to cast aspersions, but the ideas that Rob brought to the table were so authentically AD&D that for me and for James, when we would get a new manuscript from him, it was like, it's like using a time machine to get one of the people.
Yeah, I know because
the version we're getting is super loosey-goosey AD&D.
Yeah.
It even felt a little more authentic, honestly.
Yeah, I spent 2 days with Rob down in LA when Rob Kuntz for a D&D documentary, because they wanted to use my maps in the backdrop, and I lived close by, and they had Rob. So I picked him up at the airport and drove him to a hotel and back and forth from the interviews and drove around town and looked a little bit. So I got a chance to hang out for 2 days with him, and there was a lot of fun to talk about. And we talked about Grey, of course, and Greyhawk and the lore and stuff. And like you said, it was like going back and listening to how it was played before he was even made into D&D, so to speak, or early days.
And there was that whole period, and again, the timeline here, I was certainly in contact with Rob on creative endeavors much earlier than I felt like Gary was an active part of the community. Gary didn't show up right away, when AOL was going and when Greyhawk was going. It was a little bit later, and people like Erik Shook and Rob Kuntz were the ones who first started coming out of the woodwork, and you'd almost be like, oh, now we're one step away, tell us more of your glories or whatever. So it's all a lot of fanboy worship, but I was a little boy, so what can you do? So we did okay, so then blah blah blah, all that's failed, gets pushed aside. It's not happening. I'm focusing on other things. And then the 30th anniversary of D&D is coming around. And we knew we wanted to do two things for the 30th anniversary of D&D. We wanted to do the much discussed 30 best adventures in D&D history, but we also wanted to do something really special, like a Dungeon magazine issue that would go down in history as one of the most special adventures that we'd ever done. And by doing that, we said, although we're about to change the format of the magazine to be 3 adventures every issue, one for low, one for medium, one for high, let's just do one where it's one big adventure, And so James and I kind of took out our old collections and stuff, and we wanted to revisit one of the adventures. And if we could do that utilizing some of the original authors, that also struck us as very much in the spirit of the celebratory anniversary aspect of the occasion. And so we started looking through our stuff, and James and I decided on the adventure we most wanted to do. And that was Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. And we took that idea to WotC, and we said, we want to do Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. And they said, no. Specifically, they said science fantasy has no place in Dungeons and Dragons, and celebrating D&D's history by focusing on an adventure with laser guns and stuff is not D&D. And
I think
said,
Gary Julian agrees with them.
well, Gary and them are both totally wrong, but
He hates that adventure.
But at the same time, James had really started doing some deep diving on like, okay, what would it actually take to pull this off? And not just pull it off, but pull it off in 3.5, which was a much more what's the word? It takes up a lot more land than a first edition adventure, right? So you could have an encounter in 1E that took half a column that might take 3 pages, when you have to explain the stat blocks and all this other shit. So we started kind of breaking down, well, how would we actually do Expedition of the Barrier Peaks, and realized it would be like a 300-page issue. So like the Wizards pushing back on the 20 adventure Age of Worms outline, there were times where they kept us from our own sort of worst excesses. And so they said, no, you can't do Expedition of the Barrier Peaks. So I said, well, fuck. Well, what can I do? And I said, well, I've already got contacts with Gary and Gary and Rob from some of that old Castle Greyhawk conversation. Maybe I could get them to help participate in an adventure. And what would that leave us with? And then we quickly were like, Mordenkainen's Fantastic Adventure, for as weird of a name as it is, and for as much of the focus is often on the pre-generated characters, is actually a pretty cool adventure. It's got Kurzit, it's got a bunch of other really neat stuff. Let's pick that. And so James and I rewrote the first 2 levels. I think I did level 1, and I think he did level 2. And then we asked Rob, would you be willing to contribute, your own new level? Because how cool would that be, as if we showed that there's a whole new level to this? And Rob was delighted by the opportunity. Extended the same opportunity to Gary, but Gary obviously had other commitments. And so what Gary was more of a consultant. We'd sent him all the drafts. I asked him, is the Cult of the Ebon Flame related to this thing or what? And he gave me some pretty interesting like lore that I was able to put in, and gave the project his blessing. But it's really co-written by me, James, and Rob. And Rob's contribution was that new level. And so as Rob started really getting into that, we started realizing, well, there could be dozens of levels to this thing. So why don't we just kind of adopt Mare Castle as the official mega dungeon of Dungeon, and let's just keep Rob going as long as Rob's willing to contribute new articles. Now we knew that James would have to put significant effort into sort of fixing up the rules part of it, and then also
like converting them
Rob's
into
got a little
modern-
bit of a stream of consciousness kind of notes kind of style, so it does take a little bit of work to pull that into sentences that mesh with each other and all that. I'm trying to be very polite, but also not trying to say that he's a bad writer. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying stylistically his approach was different than what we did in the magazine, so it was always more of a collaboration, I think, between James and Rob. And so but we were giddy. I mean, we were more thrilled to get something from Rob than almost any contributor, because all of a sudden it's like, look at this crazy trap or whatever. And so the idea was just to continue doing Mare Castle levels indefinitely. But then the magazine got canceled. So I think we got 3, maybe 2. I'm not really sure. I'd have to.
Well, I think this is the first add-on here. The Chamber. This is 2005. So
yeah. This is almost certainly the first one. There was the Wizard's Walk, I think, was another one, and a Warlock's Walk or something. And then there's like one more. But anyway, just an addendum to this is
what a great story.
We had such a great time working with Rob, and his levels were very popular. People really liked the whole project from top to bottom. I think because it had that indelible sort of AD&D spirit.
Yeah, it was a genuine old school.
It felt genuine. Yeah. And I think also importantly, because it was in 3.5 rule set, it gave that newer audience who maybe hadn't had the chance to experience it the first time. It gave them a free license to what is a dungeon filled with mega difficult traps and so anyway, as an addendum then, so we lose the licenses to the magazines, and all of a sudden we've got to start working on Pathfinder. And we were at the same time talking to Rob about publishing his Caliburn dungeon, El Raja Keep, and not as a Pathfinder adventure, but as a adventure that could get plugged into a variety of campaign settings. So the idea was like, here's this castle that kind of fades in and out of different worlds at times. And so you'll see that in the original Pathfinder campaign setting stuff, when we're talking about Absalom, the main city, and all the various dungeons and stuff outside the city of Absalom, there's a reference that says there's a multi-dimensional castle called El Rajaki that sometimes appears right outside our main city. That's because we were going to publish that adventure in like year 1 or 2 of Pathfinder originally. In fact, the cover of the Pathfinder adventure 7 Swords of Sin, which was one of the year 1 or 2 adventures that we published for Pathfinder, was the cover to El Rajaki.
Oh, wow.
It was commissioned for that. The woman who's in the front of it was the main villain of El Rajaki. And then, of course, what happened is Rob never delivered the manuscript. So we never published it and never again made a reference. But the contract that I have with Rob for El Rajaki, which I suppose I still have, it's probably expired by now, right? But it gave us permission to refer to it within Pathfinder stuff just along those lines. But we excised it completely because that is never going to happen. And
right, and he published it himself on a DVD or whatever, right?
Whatever, God bless his soul. But it just didn't,
right.
Contract got violated, so what am I going to do? So we repurposed that art and everything, but that is the lineage. So at one time or another, I had my hands in trying to publish the Castle Greyhawk by the original authors, Mari Castle by the original authors, and then El Rajaki by the original author. I think Mari Castle is clearly the only one that was in any way successful, and I'm very proud of the success.
Oh yeah, it's
well, I mean, this
legendary.
That's a story I've not told in a long time,
and I'm glad I was able to bring it back out with just that simple question. But yeah, we're talking about mega levels for Greyhawk adventuring here. 17th level characters and 3.5 is nothing to sneeze at. So yeah, really cool. Yeah,
and that was the other cool thing. James Jacobs, by the way, my partner in crime for a long, long time in the publishing world, loves high level adventuring. I unfortunately am enough of a publisher to hate high level adventures. Shit, and you're going to lose your shirt every time you publish one. But that's less important in Dungeon, where you're getting one every month because it's part of the whole piece of the puzzle. So James has always been very excited about high level stuff. And, that's another reason why we were excited about Rob's contributions to the Mari Castle articles, for sure.
Awesome. I've never run this and don't know much about it, but it looked pretty terrifying and difficult. So that's a great thing, and it's a long and Codex of Dead Names. That doesn't sound too dangerous. Yeah. So, but what a great story there. I'm so glad you shared it with us, Erik. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just knowing that, wow, it goes way back. I mean, it goes back to when you were. Just getting your feet wet there, which is really
neat. I was just a little boy.
Yeah. Oh man. Somebody ran a Mona adventure at Virtual this past year. Yes.
Yeah, Alan Groy ran River Blood.
Yeah, River Blood. Yeah.
Another adventure that would probably not be written.
That's today. That was a core Living Greyhawk module, right?
One of the first 3.
Yeah, one of the first 3. Yeah. There's a lot of that going around where you can't publish stuff. I mean, but we're going to try at least. So going back to Diamond Lake, Erik, I have my own location. I've said this multiple times on shows. We had our one main location there. It was House of Ill Repute, named the Tickling Feather. Okay, so I put it into the map. I mean, right outside the circle. I mean, but hey, houses.
The article is a little deep on houses of ill repute.
Yeah, it is, so it doesn't matter, right?
I think thematically, thematically, it probably fits rather well.
No, it definitely fits. It's like, have you ever heard of a mining town in the 1800s? But no.
Yeah, exactly. But
see how far that argument gets you on Twitter.
Yep.
Look at how we're almost to that 2 hours window already. Isn't it crazy?
Yep.
Like I said, we can, you and Ed, we can sit here and just listen all day and all night long. I mean, it's just fantastic.
This is awesome.
It's just wonderful. And hopefully it's brought back some really great memories. I know there's a lot of BS going on right now, Erik, but I know that just...
even among BS, there's really interesting... Look, here's the thing. Every change in circumstance allows for new opportunities.
Yeah.
And Paizo is a company that has traditionally done very well when presented with challenging situations that require new opportunities. So I have to tell you, as much as this week has been extraordinarily challenging in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of reasons why a lot of people are very nervous. I actually am pretty energized in a way that I haven't been in a while. So
Cool.
we'll see what happens, but
I know our friends
we're at our best when we're up against the wall, folks, and I think we've proven that in the past, and I'm kind of very comfortable in that position. So.
Our friends at
we're looking forward to
TLG
it.
are excited about all this going on.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
see an
wow.
opportunity, you know?
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
so all right. So Eric, what do you want to shout out? What do you got going on in your world at Paizo? Announcements of anything releases?
I mean, no, nothing to announce at this time, Jay.
Okay.
No, like
yep.
we're doing all kinds of interesting stuff. We got a new well, I got the new Fist of the Ruby Phoenix hardcover. I'll show you that since you're allowing me to show.
Yeah,
I do
please.
have this, which is a complete Pathfinder campaign that is a martial arts tournament. It's for characters 11 through 20th level.
Oh,
There's
nice.
Oh, wow. Yep.
It's a great follow-up from the Abomination Vaults complete adventure path that we released a few months ago. So this is, big, nice 300-page hardcover, 3 adventures in one. So
what release date?
that's pretty cool. Brand new. I think it's heading to stores right now. Actually.
Okay. Awesome.
My copy off a fresh pallet at the office last week. So
It's not a number 1 though.
What's that?
It's not a number 1 like the other book.
No, it's 11th level. So
No. I mean, it's not the number 1 book like the Cauldron book. You have it right.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Nice callback. No, there is not an autographed page with an individually numbered edition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like that one. So
this is $54.99, very reasonably priced, mass market, hardcover edition. So
very cool. Excellent.
Yeah, and beyond that, it's like I don't know.
Well, I can say what's
a lot to think about in the next few weeks here. A lot of important decisions to make, and
we're looking forward to hear some.
Again, to be totally honest, one of the reasons no one's heard anything from us on this yet is we're still gathering information and formulating our plans. And once we've gathered the information we need and we've formulated the plans that we will have, I guarantee you everyone will know what's on our mind. But right now we're still trying to figure that out.
We're looking forward to it, really. Yep.
And let's just say that I am excited. I know it's 5-6 weeks out, but right now, the verified people that are going to be playing in my game, Erik, Ed Greenwood, and Darling, because I got to have them back together. I got to have you two back together.
Oh, you're putting me and
Darling,
and Ed Greenwood in the same party.
Oh yeah, the Puppets Adventure. Venerian Forward with the Ravalantar, and oh my god, and here's a couple other things, Erik.
Yeah.
We may have Stephen Chenault back, and remember, Stephen Chenault played in the adventure where you initially stole the tongue.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes. Awesome. Yeah. Ties in well.
Some exclusives. Flavius will be. I have to have that in, and we're not sure. Luke Gygax is confirmed, but we're not sure what time slot Luke's going to go. If he can only do that time, then he'll be in that game too. But we're trying to spread him out.
Well, you know, Venorian Board is a huge fan of Prince of Bright Flame.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
Good old son of Melf. So yeah.
Am I ever going to meet Anna's character again? That's his
that was fun. Yep.
That's his friend, but also the one who kind of.
Well, we kind of
Maybe Imri, you could put in a recommendation.
Yep.
Remember, Imri got killed last adventure. She did get.
I got killed and resurrected. So yep.
Those dragons. Yeah.
Yep.
And by the way, I still don't hear the end of running that half dragonborn character from Troy and the other audience. When I did that last year.
Jay have to
Greyhawk audience is not a big fan of half dragons.
No, and Jay will have to suffer the rest of his adventuring career.
Because one freaking time is like an off-color joke there a little bit. So me running that kind of stuff. So
I will be excited to play. And Jay, one of the cool things about these things is they always support a great charity.
Thank you.
Yes, and Jude's. It's great. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now Casey's starting to fight. They're canon. Oh my god. Yes.
So
Puppets on steroids.
But I do have a question for you,
Please.
Jay, and Anna, feel free to chime in on this. We together have experienced what was the last one we did? Not puppets, the other one.
Gargoyle.
Gargoyle.
Yeah.
That was that was
one of my early adventures that I played
Yep.
with you. Touched upon your favorite location in the Central Flannis, the Doom Grinder.
Yes, yeah, the favorite one I'd love to hate. And
We've now got puppets on deck.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far out ahead of our skis here. But what would come after that?
Yeah.
What would come after that?
Jay, what do you not want to run? So yeah.
Well, not even what do you not want to run, because I think that's implied. What's truly like in that same?
What's truly awful?
I think
I know exactly what you're aiming for here.
Child's Play's, oh my God,
I
Forest
know,
Oracle.
Eric,
That's too low level.
I know
and
exactly
one, but
what
that's
you
not
want.
Greyhawk, though, right?
I have an idea.
Exactly. Yeah, it needs to be. Yeah.
Remember, the first adventure where you stole the tongue, you were out near the Doom Grinder. But what I will do is I will somehow alternate world it where you actually have to go on that stupid cigar ship or something.
No.
That thing is so.
We need to go back to remember. We need to go back again to the big one, so to speak, the thick one. Yeah, and we should have Monty Cook playing in it.
Oh,
Return to Temple Elemental Evil. Oh my God!
And I are on opposite
yes,
sides.
I thought that's what you were.
Oh my God! No! You just gave me the idea.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have you put you up against Vampire Thrommel. Oh my God! It has to be alternate world though.
Yeah.
Like you'll step through a portal and it'll all be
I
like.
thought, Eric,
oh
I
my
thought that's
God.
what you were hinting at.
That would have been the good joke. If it was a joke, that is where I was going. I'm actually serious. Like because I like the idea of taking these things that we all sort of laugh about and are terrible, and then
do
turning
something
it into a power for good.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of like, I think there are bad modules. And I think there are modules that have a bad reputation, and I wouldn't say those are necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's certainly modules that are like, and feel free to jump down my throat on this, because I actually don't have experience at the table with these, but I've always sort of put those Falcon Master modules like somewhere in kind of middle low tier.
Yeah.
Like,
well, remember,
stuff like Patriots of Ulick is pretty
we have Fate of Istus is another one that might be something we could. We could do something with. Yeah.
Fundraiser number 2 was the Return of the Falcon. I did an entire.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Are those good? I don't.
No.
There was just a lot of craft involved in those, and I was both unexcited about craft and too anal about my books to want to cut anything up that came in.
They were disappointing as a series. But once again, they killed the Circle of 8. The Circle of 8 dies in every adventure. Vector lives, they all die. Yeah, I mean, in the Falcon series, the Falcon, it's just, but we had we did an entire Return to the Falcon fundraiser event and that was the theme, where it went all the way through to the final battle where they actually fought her in Altamira in my city. Yeah, that was fundraiser number 2. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
What was that 3? I lose track. Yeah, but
we'll have to keep our eyes and ears open for the right modules. But we got a few here. Forest Oracle.
But this one's going to be. I'm hoping to have some comedy thrown in on this one with a little just fun time, and just have a really great fundraiser event. We got some unbelievable channels participating.
How could it not have comedy in it? And again, everyone, spoiler alert. So hit mute if you don't want a spoiler for puppets. But we are going to be facing Freddie McCruger.
Yeah, exactly.
How could it not be at least a little funny?
Yeah, Freddie and Friends. Oh my
fabulous
gosh.
Freddie McCruger.
It's just, but like I said, I have a little surprise too.
Oh, I can't wait.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So, like I said, Bill is scouring the Thingiverse world, because almost everything's been turned into a 3D print to find these 3D print models of these things, especially the one I want for this fundraiser. And then, so much is coming up in 2023. It's exciting. I don't personally, whatever happens with I'm not even going to say it. Whatever happens on that end, it's not going to affect us here. We're going to keep on. We're going to keep on rolling. We're going to keep on doing things.
Yep.
And just having fun and just like having these great shows. And Eric, I really appreciate you coming on today. This was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Discussion.
Hey, here's hoping I don't have to start demanding an appearance fee just to pay my happy to come on every time you want.
Eric, I will pay you what I pay Ed.
Yeah.
Oh, good. 0.
Yeah, that's the slogan here. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I'm worth certainly not a penny more. That's for sure. That's for sure.
All right, let's do the giveaway real quick. Anna, do you want to shout anything while I'm setting this up? Finalizing this?
Well, we can say there will be a mapping live stream again next week, and I'm now putting together Altamira map is coming really
Yes.
well, working on that, and my Southern Shieldlands is coming together. So there is render. I probably have probably about 10,000 square miles of terrain at 5 feet per pixel coming together. So there's a whole bunch of cool stuff. There will be the Meyerhawk version of the Furundi will come next week, because I've reworked Furundi for my campaign, so that will pop out on the stuff there. There might be some heraldry we'll see. So that is it's underway, so to speak. So yeah, so there's a lot of big projects that will take a few more weeks to come, but the Altamira is gearing up. I'm just going to render I will probably do that tonight, render the textures. Beautiful. And then there's some Photoshop, and then we move into the forest bit. So there's 2 more turnarounds with rendering twice, so to speak. First render the texture Photoshop work, and then rendering the forest, so we get all the shadows from all the little knobby trees that pops up, and buildings and stuff. So that is, so it's building up, and it's over 3,000 square miles around Altamira in that.
Yes, it's amazing with those new machines. By the way, we will do the other Age of Worm adventures, please, everyone. We're going to go through the dungeons like we did. We got one done tonight, but that was the great one there. So the giveaway tonight, if you have these already, let me know. But so Gary's the Isle of Dread recompilation, Greyhawk guide to the Isle of Dread. All right, and then if you don't have this, I mean, this we'll do a Scarlet Brotherhood. But if you already have it, I got other stuff here. So there are the 2 I'm going to do for the giveaway. All right. Yeah.
What's that Isle of Dread thing again?
Oh, it's a PDF of the compilation of all.
Gary Julian put together. He wrote up the wrote together like
material.
It's like a blog post he wrote about
Greyhawk Mike's maps in there, and all the stories.
That's pretty cool.
Do you want?
It's a summary thing. So
Anna, you have it, right? You have this?
I have it somewhere. So yeah.
We
so
can send it
hang
to
on
you,
a second.
Eric. We can send it to you, no problem. Send you a PDF. So you have it.
You don't even have to do the drawing. What a great deal.
Yes, absolutely. This is a hard copy of it. So could someone in chat please link where this is on Cannon Fire?
Hang on a second.
Because it is still on Cannon Fire for download. Yep. So, and the PDF, I will give you a hard copy of that. So, all right, let me get out of this and we'll close it out. Norker, I'm almost positive it is. Gary's on still, so I thought 100. Last time we had it up, I thought it was still available off the site. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
It should be available somewhere. Yeah.
No, this isn't a pirate PDF. This is a compilation of all.
Oh yeah, Gary wrote up like a blog post, and then he made it into a PDF, and
fan content. This is a fan content put together. No pirate there. We're gonna give up pirate stuff ever. It's fan content. Yep. All right, closing this out.
Yeah, I found it.
Awesome. If you can link that in chat, that would be great.
Yep. I'm going to hang on a second.
Norker, you won. Norker. There you go. There you go. It's right there for a download. Everyone get that. You can get that All Dread PDF. You see that, Eric? BB Fan Fun just linked it.
Yep, I see it.
Awesome.
Oh, you found the link.
Yeah,
okay,
BB
good.
Fan Fun did it. So.
Yep,
absolutely. So.
Perfect.
Good.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice thing. That, and this is the kind of great stuff that the community has been doing, and continues to do, no matter what happens outside in the real world of business. We're going to keep on. Norker, are you good with that? Are you good with that hard copy of these 2? Let me know. All right, if you want to change it up, let me know. Okay, we can do that off. I'm going to be. I've been requested to go on the Cannon Fire Discord too, so I'll be on there after the show tonight. So, any last thoughts, Eric?
No. Thank you for having me. It's always fun. You dislodge things from my brain I haven't thought about in a long time.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
He said Eric will be back in a month and a half on a Saturday night playing the legendary Venarium Board. It only gets better. With what a group. Yeah, so we're going to have some fun with that. So, and for a good
Looking
cause.
forward to it.
Yep. All right, well, we'll see everyone. See everyone soon. Thanks a lot. Schedule. It's only a 3-stream week. Sorry. Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday next week. I do have real quick. I apologize. I'm a mess. The next special event's coming up. The Slav Squad is on the 28th. The all-female group plus Josh, right, is the 28th. Let me see if I can bring that up. And that is, I'm looking for a special guest. I'm working on a special guest right now, so I don't have a title. I know what I want to do with it. Elven-based out of Celine adventure. Hopefully, we'll find out. But you know, the all-female crew. You know, Erik, I did a crossover event with Edge Group and the Slavs together in one adventure right before
yeah?
right before holidays.
Oh,
my
that
God,
was fun.
that was
That was fun to
hysterical.
watch.
Oh
Yep.
my
Mhm.
gosh, that
Yep.
was great. Yeah, and then we got a BattleTech stream coming up in 2 Saturdays on a morning. But other than that, that's all that's going on. It's so much. GaryCon, I'm going to be so overwhelmed with. I've been asked to do a lot of stuff at GaryCon, so
Yep.
please note
I can
that.
tell that I will have a separate seminar myself on GaryCon
Yeah.
as well, because that got approved today. I got the email, so that will be a part, yeah, as well as a fantasy mapping show and a Legends and Lore.
Let me hit a right
So
button
yeah,
here.
mhm.
It's going to be a fun one. See you all soon. Let's rate it into Darling. Let's see if we can get over 100 and go in with her. I know she's
Yep.
got her stream tonight. See you all. See you all on Wednesday. Have a good one. We still have a Legend or topic. We'll get that set for
Mhm.
Wednesday.
Yep.
Eric, thanks. Anna, thanks. See you soon.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys.
All right. Let me set the rate
Now
up.
now he has to press the wrong button here to go somewhere. And yep.
I always do.
Oh yeah, you haven't. Yeah, it's 50% of the time is that tongue video that Tim did. That was kind of
Yeah, that's intentional.
he
That's
seems
the
to
wrong
be on
one.
some sort of shortcut that always ends up.
Yeah, because I
There we
have
go.
them reversed in certain ones. One, these 30, it's a scene thing. It's on my Stream Deck, but they're backwards. 5, 4,
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. See you Wednesday. 88. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yep.
So Eric, let me get offline here real quick. Here, make sure it went in. It went.
Yep, it went in.
Right there she is. All right, let me end the stream here.